So I'd like to officially declare the meeting open. I'd also like to remind everybody that in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, this meeting is being live streamed. So the Acknowledgement of Country and Prayer to Council will be read and the affirmation will be read by the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Acknowledgement of Country. Before we begin proceedings, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and their ancestors past and present, the Cabral clan of the Darug Nation. I also acknowledge that this land was accessed by peoples of the Dharawal and Darug Nations. Affirmation of Counsel. We affirm our hope and dedication to the good government of our city and the well-being of all of Liverpool's residents, no matter their race or creed. Tonight, we affirm our hope for sound decision-making by Council, which will improve the quality of life in our city. We express our expectations and best wishes for Australia, our nation's future, the Mayor, councillors and staff of Council, and all those associated with good government in Liverpool. And the prayer of Council. For the God of our faith, we who are gathered at Liverpool City Council pray for the good government of our city. We pray for the well-being of all Liverpool's residents, no matter their race, gender or creed. Tonight we pray for sound decision-making by Council, which can improve the quality of life in our city. We pray for Australia, our nation's future, for the Mayor, our councillors and the staff of Council, and all those associated with good government in Liverpool. Amen.
Thank you. Do we have any apologies? Nil. Condolences, nil. Confirmation of minutes.
I just got one issue with the minutes. Page 12, sorry. Just in regards to EGRO 01. 1.2. To leave Middleton Centre as it is as a town centre. It's not currently a town centre, it's a village centre. So if we could just, I don't have an issue with it being classified as a town centre, it's just I think making the assertion that it currently is a town centre is not correct and someone might misuse that to make the case that, anyway, should be correct, I guess is the point I'm making.
So you want the terminology improved?
Tidied up, yeah.
Thank you. Any other amendments?
Yes, Madam Mayor, in relation to the same item, on page 13, it reads that the foreshadowed motion was carried. The votes for were 5, the votes against were 5. The Mayor is shown as voting against, but the commentary above says the Mayor used her casting vote to vote for. Maybe I'm missing something, and I suppose it's conceivable that you did, yes.
I did.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was just checking. Yeah,
I was just maintaining the status quo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I move the minutes be adopted then, subject to the comment of Nathan Haggerty.
Yeah, happy to second it, Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Councillor Haggerty. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Declarations of interest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In relation to item CONF01, over the years I've had dealings with just about every party referred to in that item. I'm going to call it non-pecuniary, but I will leave the virtual room in any event.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Hibb.
Yeah, I would like to mention also just within the conf, Clayton Utes, one of my very, very close relatives is a senior solicitor there. Their name has not been mentioned in the report, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay,
so less significant, non-pecuniary.
Thank you. Councillor Hull?
Yes, the usual. EGRO 01, non-pecuniary, less than significant, and I'll be staying.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, NOM 04.
Yes.
Extending support to people seeking asylum. Less than significant, non-pecuniary, but I'm currently the Treasurer of West Rock.
Okay.
I will leave the room and I won't vote in the matter. But, Madam Mayor, they've asked me to present a letter, which I will do in the councillor's presentation, which relates to that matter.
Okay, just if I forget, please give me a reminder because sometimes I get a bit flummoxed by the agenda. Thank you. Any others?
Yeah, I'm 04 as well. I'm the chair of an organisation that has quite a bit to do with asylum seekers, less than significant non-pecuniary.
Okay. Councillor Caliander, did you want to say something? No? Okay then, moving on. Thank you very much, councillors. The next item is mayoral report. There isn't one. The next one is eGrower 1 and the report recommendations on page 78.
Yeah, just a question. Page 81. So that section there where it's got advice provided to Greater Sydney Commission and it's got the motion that Council resolved on the 25th of March. I don't recall the short-term bit at the end. Can someone remind me what short-term, what that means, why it's there?
Mr. Moore or Mr. Smith, are you able to provide advice on that, please?
I'm just getting to that page, I'm sorry, and through the CEO. Mr. Smith, are you online? Do you have any recollection of the meaning of short term there?
I'll have to, thank you, through the CEO, I'll have to double check that wording. If that was a typographical error, that can be fixed. The important part was the actual wording of the resolution. Short term may have come in because of the time frame that the councillors actually put on that resolution.
Madam Mayor, if I may comment, I believe that is the case. In the short term was meant that it was to be addressed as soon as possible in the short term and not put off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's in ASAP, basically, as soon as possible. All right.
Thank you, which is the intention of doing the structure plan, as you're aware, councillors.
Okay.
I have a question, Madam Mayor, when you're ready.
Yes, hold on. I've got somebody having a chat. So can we just put your mute button on if you're not actually speaking, please? Yes, Councillor Rhodes.
Has Council heard back from the DPIE yet?
I'll ask the CEO.
Mr. Smith, yep.
Thank you. Through the CEO, in relation to what specifically, councillor?
It says in the report that Council was waiting on the DPIE to get back to them, and they hadn't at this particular stage. I was just wondering if they had, in the interim, up to now, the council meeting, have you heard from the Department of DPIE?
Thank you for the clarification, councillor. That was in relation to the funding allocation to the project. So simple answer, no. We've put in a request for LEP review funding to be allocated to this project. We're having ongoing discussions with DPIE in relation to that funding. In the meantime, however, council resolved to allocate funding from general reserves for this project, which we've done, but we are continuing to see if the LEP review funding can be allocated to this project as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Any other questions? Is there any opposition?
Sorry, Mayor, I don't think anyone's moved anything.
We need a mover and a seconder. Thank you,
I
Councillor.
move the recommendation, Councillor Hadi.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Who was the seconder? We had several.
I'll second Councillor Caliander.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any opposition? I'll put it unanimously. Thank you. Next item's on page 85.
I'll move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton.
I'll second it.
Madam Mayor, I have...
Hold on a minute. Councillor, yes, now Councillor Rhodes.
Seconded.
I've got a mover and a second. Councillor Shelton and seconded Councillor Haggerty. Yes, Councillor Rhodes.
Madam Mayor, there was a motion moved at the last council meeting, which was to prepare a master plan for a visitation precinct that includes Collingwood House, Liverpool Museum, New Liverpool Historical Society and Aboriginal Arts, Culture and Learning Facility, cafe, car and bus parking for the land bounded by the Hume Highway, Congressional Drive and Birkdale Crescent, Liverpool. Has that gone into the destination management plan?
Councillor, it's a good question, and I don't think it's been picked up to go into the DMP at this point, though you raise a good point that it should be. I can assure you work's already commenced on that. Dr. Jackson's team have started work on that. So I'll take that one on notice, and if it hasn't been placed in there, we'll update the DMP to reflect that.
Can I make an amendment to the motion then?
No, councillor, you can't. The motion is resolved by the previous council and...
No, to the motion at the moment.
Oh, sorry, I apologise. Yes, certainly. You can put up...
To include that in the motion, that I'd also like to change the date. We've got March 2022 for the next review of it. I think it should be done March 2021 because of the very changing situation that we're in with COVID.
Well,
so, thank you. So, apologies, councillor.
So
I'm
I'd
just
like
going to ask the mover and the seconder, are they happy for this?
I have more. Will we go through it?
Just wait a second. Are you happy to adopt so far this amendment into your resolution, councillor?
I'm happy to note that there's currently a master plan underway for the Collingwood precinct. Yep. Got 3 notes that there is a master plan underway for the Collingwood precinct.
All right, thank you. Continue, Councillor Rhodes.
Well, can we have the date changed to review the DMP from March 22 to March 21?
Again, I'll ask the mover and the seconder, are they comfortable with that date change?
No. I guess my issue there is I don't think much is going to happen in terms of the world changing too much in the next sort of 6 months, or probably closer to 9 months. But I imagine there's a fair bit of work that goes into doing this review. I'd rather the staff go into delivering the master plan than doing reviews on it.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question in relation to that? What would be the through you to the CEO, what would be the difference between having a review in March 2021 and March 2022? Like, would there be a substantial difference in terms of the material covered and the information that was brought back to council?
That's a somewhat difficult question to answer because the world is in such an unknown state at the moment. There is obviously there's staff time attached to undertaking any review, and I think Councillor Haggerty picked that up. Whether the content would be materially different, look, your guess is as good as mine to some extent, Councillor Caliendo. I'm not sure. We're obviously trying to implement as much of the DMP as we can under the current circumstances, but as you're aware of it, a lot of it is around socialising spaces and engaging with communities, and that's a somewhat challenging space at the moment. So I can't entirely answer that question for you. What I can say is that there is staff time involved in undertaking reviews. So while we're of course happy to do it if councillors wish it for 2021, the DMP itself, as it stands now, talks about a review every 2 years.
What about we have a briefing in March 21 and a review in 2022?
Councillor Rhodes?
Well, Madam Mayor, because I've noted that the Visitation Concept Precinct Master Plan hasn't been put into the Destination Management Plan. It was just a way of assuring that those things had gone in. And I pick up on the CEO's comments. We do live in very challenging times and a lot is going to happen over the next 12 months. And I just think it would be very prudent of council to review the DMP in March 21.
Well, Councillor Rhodes, the seconder is saying he wouldn't be happy with it, so the mover hasn't indicated either way, but given one is opposing possibly two, I'd suggest maybe your amendment has to be a standalone motion or after this one. Okay.
So, so I'd have to put up a foreshadow motion where the only difference would be receive and review the DMP in March 2021.
Yeah.
And I can't see what the...
It says receive and note the report and receive a review on DMP in March 2022. So, and they were happy to adopt receive and note the report, and currently notes there's a master plan underway for the Collingwood House precinct. So that's also...
can we change that Collingwood House precinct to the visitation concept precinct?
Can I ask the CEO, has there been actually a proper plan boundary for that as yet?
No, not at this point in time, Madam Mayor. It was a resolution of council last month. We started the work, but it's an enormously complicated piece of work with multiple stakeholders in it. So we certainly haven't defined the full scope yet outside of the scope that's been defined by the resolution of council.
So we don't know as yet what boundary that will actually include or preclude or whatever.
I mean, the resolution of council articulates to some extent a boundary, but as councillors will be aware, there's some Indigenous heritage issues based on that land as well. We need to be very cautious that we're respectful towards those. So I'm a little bit conscious about not dictating what's going to go on that space outside of having done that work with the relevant stakeholders yet.
I'll ask the mover and
second. The word used in the motion was visitation precinct.
Yes, I appreciate that, Councillor. Councillor Sheldon and Councillor Haggerty, are you happy with the terminology visitation precinct, given at the moment we don't have a proper definition as yet?
For my part, I'm quite happy. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor?
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
And for the record, there was from the land bounded by the Hume Highway, Congressional Drive and Birkdale Crescent, Liverpool.
Yeah. Maybe it'd be better if we put that in the motion rather than visitation precinct.
Well, the visitation
that area
being the land, I'm happy for that not to go in it. We know what motion we're talking about. Yes. Because we've got the visitation precinct in there, and that was the title of the motion. So the only contending thing is to review it in March 2021. I wonder if council will send me. Well, when's the report supposed to come back to council on that? Because
so
they will
in March
that it has been included into the DMP.
Councillor, if it would give you some assurance, I'm more than happy to circulate the revised DMP if this resolution gets up that puts in the visitation precinct into the DMP. There's no issue with that. We can make that adjustment and then circulate it around so you can have some confidence that it's been included.
I'm happy with the motion put up by Shelton and Haggerty.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Is there any further discussion? So the foreshadow. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I just commend the wider acceptance of the Love Liverpool logo and also the expanded role of a What's On facility on the website.
Oh, that's lovely. We'll convey that to the staff. Thank you. All right, no discussion. Is there any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, I'm going to declare it unanimous.
Yeah.
The next one is on page 98.
Just hopefully a quick question in regards to this one. Those grants, the business resilient grants, did we have any system issues leading up to that? I've had reports of businesses having trouble filling out the form online. Was that the case?
I might ask Ms. Scott, who I'm pretty sure is online. Just checking. Yes, she is. Ms. Scott, would you be able to advise whether we've had any technical issues there?
Thank you, CEO, and good evening, councillors. As far as I'm aware, and through the CEO, as far as I'm aware, there wasn't any technical issues, but if anybody contacted us directly, we were able to then either contact them online or go out in person and help them actually lodge the grant.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a motion in regards to this.
Yes, Councillor, what is your motion?
I just want to receive a note report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We got a seconder?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor. Councillor Balut.
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
I'll foreshadow as per the book.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Haggerty.
I'll foreshadow another motion as per the book, but all applications for grant funding to be presented to council.
Okay, thank you.
So, Madam, can I just clarify something in relation to Councillor Rose's motion? Does that mean applications before they are approved or not be presented to council, or once they've been processed?
No, it would mean that the applications have to come to council to be granted. And the reason why I think it's wise for us to do that is because all grants currently come to council. It's very important for us to be absolutely transparent in everything that we do, particularly during the COVID crisis. The 1 month difference is not going to make any difference when you consider the majority of the grants seem for the establishment of websites, and indeed there's a hell of a lot of work that those businesses have to do to organise all their material that they want to put on their website, so it's not that they wouldn't be wasting time. I just feel that it's more prudent, again, for transparency, for the applicants, like all grants, to come back to council.
Can I speak to the events or...
Thank you. Councillor Haggerty, you wish to speak?
I'll let Councillor Chidi ask his question.
Okay, Councillor Chidi.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor. Just a question through, is Councillor Ayard and Councillor Rhodes pretty much the same thing? Because if we just receive a note...
No, one's just receive a note, and Councillor Rhodes is saying it's in the book, which is receive a note, and then a number 2 that the applications come before the whole council for approval.
Okay, I understand that, Mayor, but just for clarification, if we just receive a note, that would then directly mean that they would have to come to council because the delegation's not being increased?
Is now exiting.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor, do you mind if I interject?
No, go ahead.
I think Councillor Hachidi is correct. The normal process for any grants over $1,000, as you're aware, is that they all come to council. The reason for this recommendation is to just try and speed the process up for a short period of time. However, absolutely, if my delegation isn't increased, then they will have to come to council because that's the grant making process under the Local Government Act.
Thank you, CEO. Again, to you, Mayor, if I may, can I then suggest either Councillor Rhodes or Councillor Ayard withdraw because it does the same thing, so that we've got 2 motions to deal with instead of 3?
Happy to withdraw.
Thank you, Councillor.
We only have one foreshadowed motion that is there now.
Just to clarify, if Councillor Rhodes is more comfortable adding her 3rd point, I'm happy to add it on, if that makes her more comfortable.
Well, thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, when I have the opportunity, I'd like to speak to my...
No, go speak for it now, Councillor.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So reason I decided to put this up was because now a lot of the isolation guidelines from the state government have been lifted. Businesses are kind of back up and running. We still had some activity. It was more so just our restaurants and cafes that were really suffering. And now that they can open their doors and have a minimum of 10 people, I'm happy just to receive a note. Business is up
now joining.
and everyone's out and about. The streets are full, kids are back at school, so it's very promising. And to help local businesses, sure, that's paramount, but how many businesses could we possibly help, especially when we've already got a deficit budget? I mean, how far are we going to go? And the government, the state government and the federal government have already put policies in place to help local businesses and many grants in place to help local businesses. And I feel that what we did put up last, I think it was last council meeting, the one before, in regards to COVID-19 to help local businesses, I think that was adequate. Thank you, Madam Minister. I hope I have everyone's support. Thank you, Madam
Mayor, I'd like
Thank you, Councillor Yard. Is there any other speakers against?
Yeah, I'd like to speak against.
Yes,
which is sort of speaking for mine as per the book. We need to get that money out the door quickly. I know things have opened up, kids are back at school, but businesses are still suffering. I'm in a relatively lucky position financially, and when I can, I do make sure I support local Liverpool businesses, including many of our wonderful restaurants. I make a point to have a chat with them every time I go in there, see how they're going, where council can do better, what's working, what isn't. And opening up to 10, while it was welcome, they're still losing money hand over fist. Bringing in, filling 10 seats a couple times a night still doesn't bring in enough money to get these businesses back on their feet. A lot of them are running at a loss in order just to keep staff on, which is they should be commended for doing. And they're doing it hard, and they're basically keeping their head above water week by week. If we were to delay this by 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, so we could all, give it the tick of approval, that would see businesses go under, and that would see, people hit the unemployment line. I don't want to do that. What I am comfortable in doing is, and maybe this is already the case, that the CEO brings back any grants that she does approve to council for noting, but I'd also be happy to put a sunset clause on point 2. So even if that was for the next 3 months, and then that comes back in, what would that be, August or September, and we decide whether the CEO still retains that delegation. So I'll foreshadow as per the book, but I'll add for a period of 3 months to the end of point 2.
Madam Mayor, if I may make a suggestion.
I'd like to speak for the motion.
Sorry, I haven't finished.
Hold on a moment, Councillor Rhodes. Yes.
Sorry, and just yes, one final point. We don't approve all grants. I think there are quick release grants or something like that. I can't remember what they're called, but they're about $500, and I think the CEO has authority to issue those, and she does. So we don't okay every grant. Now I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ad, you wanted to say something. You've already spoken to your motion, so hopefully you're asking a question.
Yeah, it's more so a question. I just want to know if Councillor Haggerty would be open to maybe reviewing that amount, because to me $5,000 seems a bit too much. Now, I know when you just say $5,000 for one business, it's not much, but there's multiple businesses in the LGA that are going to need to apply for the $5,000, I should say. And I just think that's a bit key considering our financial position at the moment. I'm sure he did look at the budget, and it doesn't look very promising, to be honest. And we need to have good financial management, and I don't believe that the $5,000 times X amount is an example of good financial management. And I believe that the government has done a wonderful job of controlling COVID and managing COVID-19, and the isolation has been lifted and the restrictions have been lifted quite quickly, considering where we were a couple of weeks ago to now. So I trust that the numbers in restaurants and social distancing, once again, will be lifted quite quickly. I trust very much in our government and in our people that it will be lifted quite quickly. So if he could reconsider the 5,000, that would make me much more comfortable, but I still do stand by my motion, and I hope that I do have support. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, just questions.
Hold on a moment, please, everybody, one at a time. Councillor Hadid.
Okay, thank you.
Don't forget me.
But
No, I won't forget you.
Madam Mayor, in regard of speeding the process, can the CEO send a recommendation to the councillors get to be adopted?
I'll ask the CEO. I know what you're asking.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking, Councillor. So there's a number of methods that you could use for this. The first is that I could review the applications. I don't review them initially. An expert group reviews them who understand the economic climate. I could then circulate what I'm intending to release if you give me that delegation. And if there are any concerns, councillors could make that known to me and I could bring that to the council meeting. The second thing is to talk to Councillor Ayad's suggestion about lowering the delegation potentially. I've just been texting with Julie, Ms Scott, over the course of this, and who advises that the average grant is around the 1,200, 1,500 mark. So you could drop the delegation down to, say, 2,000 or 2,500 to give yourself a bit of comfort, councillors, so that the larger grants were still getting that councillor oversight. And finally, just to confirm, Councillor Haggerty is correct. I do have the delegation from you to approve grants under $1,000 at the moment. This would be very much a temporary process. We would probably only need this in place for 4 to 6 weeks just to get over this period of time. So we probably even, Councillor Haggerty, wouldn't even need a 3-month period. You could probably put that as a 6-week period, and with comfort we could resolve most of the pressing issues in this grants area.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Rhodes?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd like to speak in favour of Councillor Ayad's motion. This is a budgetary issue. That's why I believe it should be coming back to councillors. And the other thing is that you've got at least 4 business people on the council who have been through hard times and indeed are certainly going through hard times now, along with everybody else. What I think that the advice that we could give if this does come back to council would be the experience of that long-term business that we have that possibly would be missed out on if it doesn't come back to council, and also that I thought that the majority of the grants were for websites. We need to know that the businesses that are receiving the websites have enough money to be able to sustain it. Having a website is not the be-all and end-all. There's a lot of dead carcasses of websites on the net where people thought that a website was going to save their business, but in fact, it's very expensive. You've got to be able to continue to maintain SEO marketing and a whole heap of other things. And we just need to be absolutely certain that the businesses that are applying for the grants are in a position to be able to do that. That would be one consideration. Another consideration would be that we need to see what are these grants actually going to be doing for the businesses. I think that the business people that are on the council certainly would have a lot of input into that, and that is the reason why I think Councillor Ayad's motion for all applications for grant funding to be presented back to council is a matter of budgetary concern, and is definitely a time for councillors to be putting up their hand to do the work and understand, A, what council is spending their money on, and B, make sure that we're not duplicating services from other government bodies and other such things. It's just prudent management on the budget by councillors.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in support.
Excuse me, wait a minute, Councillor Balut.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak, please, in support.
You don't know, it's not your turn, Councillor Balut. Just wait a moment, please. Councillor Caliander, you had your hand up.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak against the initial motion by Councillors Ayad and Balut.
Yeah.
Look, I fully appreciate the concerns around the budgetary implications of these grants, but as Councillor Ayad referred to, there are a range of stimulus measures that have been put in place by both the federal and the state governments to make sure that the impact of COVID-19 on our economy is minimised. And as the local government, we have a responsibility to do the same. I don't believe any person, a business person or otherwise, really expected COVID-19, planned for COVID-19, or really kind of knew how to deal with COVID-19. My understanding of these particular grants is that they're not just related to websites, but a whole range of different measures that businesses can take that are appropriate for their particular business to help them respond to the situation and perhaps be able to respond to any further bumps in the road. I'm very uncomfortable with this assumption that just because the numbers in terms of the public health are down, they will be down in the foreseeable future. We know from examples across the world that there are serious concerns around a second wave. And that's partly why the federal and the state governments have been very cautious in terms of relaxing the social distancing measures, because they're waiting to see the impact of those within the community. That means that the impact on the businesses in our local community are not just going to be for the next couple of weeks. They are going to be for months and months, as people in the community are still quite hesitant to expose themselves or their loved ones to the virus. And the other point I would make, I'm very concerned about council assuming a role as an advisory body. The Local Government Act makes it very clear that our role is in terms of the vision and the guiding of the organisation. We are not there to provide individual advice to businesses about how they should be, running their business. And in previous matters, this council has been very clear that it wants to reduce red tape, and this is where I see an example of us wanting to do that so that businesses can respond quickly and efficiently to the challenges that are affecting them. So I just don't understand why we would not do that in this instance as well, where we have been quite strong on trying to reduce red tape in other ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Balut.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Madam Mayor, I not only spoken to a lot of small business in Liverpool CBD and outside, I own one. I run one over 3 decades. I feel their pain, I talk their talk, and I walk their walk. Now, having said that, things are moving forward. I did open my business and things not as bad as it seems to be. Streets are getting full, shopping centres are getting full, people are getting out and about after that lockdown. So there is some great positive signs. End of this month, things are opening up. The point I'm trying to make is I'm all out, heart and soul, to support small business. Everyone knows that. I run it, I own one, I feel it. Now, it is only fair to see what would happen beginning of next month. I don't think, as much as I'd like to be cautious, I don't think it's going to be as bad as it is, looking on the positive side. Hence, I support that motion. I think we should wait for a few more weeks. We can always act and act very quickly. We know that the CEO does have some delegation there on $1,000, that we can act on that. But again, for budgetary measures, we should just, that report, just a question, when this report was written, by the way? Can I ask that question, if you don't mind, somebody answer that?
Yes, of course you can ask that, Councillor. It would have been drafted in final draft about 10 days ago.
Right.
That's the timeline to get things to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
But can I, excuse me,
Last 10 days,
Chair,
things have moved dramatically.
I'll have to mute somebody on a minute. So the report is actually due to the councillors having a briefing and asking for some policy around what we agreed to at the extraordinary meeting. So that's the history. So keep going, Councillor Balut.
Yeah, so in those 10 days, things have changed dramatically, as we all know. Some great signs are out there, and it's looking much better than what I thought it would be as a small business operator. Now, hence I support it. I'd like to move as per Councillor Zayad and wait a few more weeks and see how we travel then. I am very optimistic. I think state and federal, equally council, have done absolutely fantastic work. That's why we're the envy of the world. So I do support it, Councillor Ayad, and it's only fair to wait and see what would happen in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers against the motion?
Not against, Mayor, but I'll speak when you're ready if I can.
You can speak now, Councillor.
Thank you. Just some questions through you, Chair, to whoever can answer, please. Do we have numbers on how many grants have been applied for at the moment and what dollar amount we're talking, please?
Ms. Scott, I'll ask you to answer that because we've been communicating about that over the course of this conversation.
Through the CEO, to date, as of yesterday, we've received 159 grants. We're currently assessing them, and the average we're looking at, depending on what their needs are, is roughly about $1,200 per grant.
Okay, so really from a council's point of view, and I suppose to all councillors, and yes, we are in a better position today than when we were, and the Mayor rightly states it was council laws in that meeting that said put aside a couple of $100,000 to this. People in good faith, and I think both the motion and the foreshadowed both want to get these grants out. It's just how they're getting out. I think as a council in good faith, we went out there, we said to the community, apply for this grant, we budgeted for it. I think as a council, we should commit to and stay with what we actually put out to the community, and that was if you apply for a grant and you tick these boxes, I think council then we should go through. Yes, we're in a better position economically, absolutely. Yes, the budget that we've got coming up shortly, we can talk about that when it comes to it, but we did as a council go out there and say, here's some money. It's really now how we're going to process these applications. If we've put a grant out and it has said, if you meet this, apply for it. If you tick all the boxes, I think as a council, it'd be pretty harsh to then turn around and say, everything's better now. We can't help you. I suppose then the biggest thing is, how do we do it? Do we do it by allowing the CEO delegation up to 5,000, or does it come back to council? At the end of the day, you know, whichever way goes up, it goes up. But I am of the belief that if we went out there with a program, we should stick to that program.
Thank you very much. Councillor, would you like the right of reply?
I would, Madam Mayor. That number that, sorry, one of the managers just mentioned, so I just did a quick calculation. So that would roughly equate to $800,000 going out just with the ones that they've received. Is that correct?
I don't think that's quite correct. Ms. Scott, have you done a review of what the quantum request is?
Thank you, CEO. Through the CEO, even though we received 157 applications and they are still under assessment, there are a number of those who will not be eligible given some of their responses to the actual criteria. Rather than giving them money, we're looking at other ways we can actually assist them.
And sorry, just to clear up there, they all haven't asked for $5,000. I think you said the average amount was about $1,200.
That's correct. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah,
which is still a significant amount considering our financial position. So look, I'm not going to repeat what I said before, but I trust that the federal and state government have done a wonderful job in helping businesses, and I trust that they will continue to do so. And as much as I want these funds to go out and these grants to go out to help our local businesses, I need them to come before council before I can make a decision on them, because it could really get out of control and we could just plummet ourselves into more deficit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to ask those that wish to vote for this motion hold on, I've got two hands up here before I go forward. Councillor Caliander, you wanted to ask a question?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I hit that before I spoke, so you've already got me. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now those that wish to vote for this motion, I'm going to actually ask you to indicate individually because I imagine it's going to be interesting. Oh, look, we've got a scorecard. Thank you. Okay, well, Councillor Add's obviously voting for it. Councillor Ballout's obviously voting for it because he seconded it. Councillor Chitty?
For
it. Councillor Did? He's not voting?
For it.
For it? Okay, thank you. Councillor Haggerty?
Against.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Councillor Caliander?
Against, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Councillor Ali Khanib?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes?
For it.
You. Councillor Shelton?
Yeah, against. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I'm against as well. I'd like my name recorded as being against this motion, please, for the minutes. The motion.
You could do the same for me too. Record me as voting against. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried.
Mayor, if it's easier, I'll call a division if it's easier for you.
Yep.
Yeah, right. We're all going to stand up. Well, there is a sheet there, Councillor. So, all right, we'll call a division. Oh, it's there anyway. Thank you very much. The typist has anticipated. Moving along, the next item on...
Can I also just ask a quick question? Will the foreshadowed motion be recorded in the minutes?
Well, it doesn't come forward, so it doesn't exist because the motion... It's null and void. You're not supposed to deal with a foreshadowed motion at all until you've actually settled the first motion. So by rights, it's just a bit of leeway of the chair so people have an understanding what's coming. You're not supposed to deal with it at all, so it doesn't exist.
Okay.
So, okay. Now, the next item on the agenda is... I'm now lost. Okay, we're on page 104.
I would like to nominate.
Can I move a motion, Mayor?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Chitty, I think you would allow a voice.
Oh, Madam Mayor. I thought.
Sorry, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Chitty.
This is going to be interesting then. Can I move a motion? And apologies to whoever's typing the minutes. I was still working on the wording. But one is direct the CEO to present options offline, and when I say offline, in a briefing session or whatnot, instead of a full report back to council, on a mechanism that allows feedback to be provided from residents in relation to the intermodal. And two, direct the CEO to report all submissions made relating to the intermodal development to council for endorsement. 3.
Councillor, there's a technical problem there. I think you need to leave endorsement off. Because yeah, it's direct the CEO to report all submissions to the council, full stop, because the council may not endorse them.
For decision or whatever. Yeah, I'm easy. I know. I think you know what I mean. And
yeah, I do. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Just
fine with that. And 3, discontinue the current intermodal committee.
Well, happy to second it. Councillor Harid.
Right, Councillor. Thank you. That's your motion. You wish to speak to your motion, Councillor?
I have a foreshadowed motion, Madam Mayor.
Well, hold on a minute. My suggestion, Councillor Rhodes, is speak against this motion and in that highlight your foreshadowed motion sentiments. Councillor Chitty?
Thanks, Mayor, and I will briefly. The intermodal in various forms has been operating for a very long time, since 2010 when this started. Yes, we've been involved in it. It has progressed over the time, and the feedback from the community has been very important in directing which way and how we make our submissions on these developments. After speaking to both everyone, being officers and residents, in relation to this. I think we need to work out a different way to achieve the outcomes that maybe we're looking for. If all submissions come to council, allows the community the opportunity to have their say. So hopefully we'll be back in a council chamber soon and our community is able to stand at that box and have their say. If not, they know that they can contact their councillors via email with the points and the issues that they have. They can do that now with all submissions coming to council for us to have a look at and do what it is that council decides to do. But point one, more importantly, I'm just not sure how I can say this, not being enclosed. There's got to be a better way of hearing them in relation to this. And I, as the chair of the Intermodal Committee, believe that there can be a better way. And in discussions with the CEO, who I'm sure may then delegate that to one of her or the people involved in the intermodal, we'll be able to sit down and work out a better mechanism to ensure that everybody is heard. This is not being done to shut out the community. This is actually being done to hear more from the community, but just in a different format. I just hope everyone supports it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wish to speak against the motion? Councillor
Yes,
Rose?
Madam Mayor, then I'll take your advice and I'll speak against the motion and give my reasons why. I think that Councillor Hachiti, who I do respect as being the chairman of the current Intermodal Committee, and I think he's done a fabulous job. However, I think that it would be sending a very bad message at the moment if Council was to close the Intermodal Committee. I think the situation that Councillor Hachiti is talking about is a situation from the past. I think at the moment, with the current legal avenues that are being taken and Council's assistance in that particular issue, it is even more important for us to continue with the Intermodal Committee. And I think that by closing that Intermodal Committee, I think that what it is saying, oh, Council, that's it, Council's not going to be supporting the mitigation work that really we have to do. And it is all about mitigation, whereas I think for the first time that is solidly on the agenda. And I believe that the situation that Councillor Hachiti is talking about is a situation from the past where everybody was flustered, running around like chooks without their heads and didn't know really what to do except to complain and continue complaining, and you'd hear the same complaints on each issue. I do believe the Intermodal Committee can work, and that I would nominate myself to go onto that Intermodal Committee with a vision of making it be responsive to results of the meetings. And I think that would be, even if we give it a time frame trial to see how it goes, I think that would be a better decision from Council than to cancel the Intermodal Committee. So I would put up a motion that Council continue.
No, don't write that at the point, but just say it verbally, Councillor Rhodes.
Okay, that Council continue with the Intermodal Committee, that I nominate myself to be another councillor on that committee, and that the committee is on a trial period of, how often does it meet?
I don't have the charter in front of me. I think it's 4 times a year. I've just asked Mr. Smith.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Well, let's make it for 2 meetings. A trial period of 2 meetings where the committee has got the opportunity to be results driven, or it will be go back to Council for consideration of cancelling the committee. So that would be the basis of my motion, Madam Mayor.
I'll second it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll second it. But I guess I'd like to make a couple of
I thought that was more. Well, I actually didn't realise. Yeah.
additions. I'd like to put
Councillor Haggerty, you're putting the horse before the cart. As I explained, you have to deal with this motion first. Councillor Rhodes basically explained the basis of her opposition and what she would probably do in a foreshadowed motion that gives people the flavour. So, any other speakers against?
I'd like to speak against Councillor Hachidi's motion. While I think it's, this is a very, look, this is still an important issue. And as Councillor Rhodes said, we need to mitigate any effects from this. So while I think the idea about having additional mechanisms for people to allow feedback is a good one. I think Councillor Rhodes should incorporate that into her motion. We still need a committee. So on an issue that's important as this one, I think you need a number of different mechanisms in order to get feedback from the community and in order to take the fight up to the intermodal. So I'd be willing to keep the committee going, but also have additional mechanisms where the community could provide feedback. So not everyone can make it to a committee at night, as we saw in the district forum last night, which was a fantastic success. So online, sometimes some people can only get to things online. So online, committee, a number of different ways would be very good.
And the dishwasher, yours is there. Hello. Just organising children's dinners. Okay, thank you. We got any speakers that was against for the motion, Councillor Chitty's motion, besides Councillor Chitty, of course? Nobody? Okay, well, I'm going to put...
Mayor, just before you shut it off...
You want the right to reply?
Actually, given that there seems to be a change in sentiment from some, I'd like to make a change to my motion, if that's okay with you. Hello?
Okay, sorry about that, Councillor. I was having a little domestic difficulty. Someone just accidentally threw their dinner in the bin. Okay, all right. Now, what you were saying, Councillor?
Given there seems to be some sentiment changes within some, and I'd hate it to be seen that I'm a bad person and want to shut this down, can I make an amendment to my motion?
What do you want to do to your motion, Councillor?
Well, get rid of number 3.
Yep.
Yeah, and nominate councillors Hachidi geez, sorry, I forgot your name.
Rhodes.
Councillor Rhodes to the Intermodal Committee. Let's see how that goes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Given there seems to be some sentiment
you're
changes.
happy to take that as your right of reply?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to put the motion. Where's our little sheet? We've got a check sheet, so I'm going to call the roll any minute now.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, just a quick question. Is there any cost for council for that committee?
Sorry, what was that?
Is there any cost to host that intermodal committee?
Well, it's the same cost as any other committee, councillor. It's staff's time, taking minutes, booking rooms, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, intermodal is there. It's going to happen. So my thoughts would be, would it be councils wasting money? I'm not sure. Maybe Councillor Hachidi would be in a better position to answer that.
Well, I think Councillor Hachidi had actually put up a motion, but he's now changing it. So he's nominating 3 councillors by the look of it to the committee.
No, Mayor, I'm nominating 2 councillors. I'm not sure how Councillor Haggerty got onto that score sheet.
I don't either, but he's there, so we need to probably change that to Councillor Chitty. All right.
I have some questions, Madam Mayor, before
we proceed. What is your questions, Councillor?
The questions are, if we can get rid of this sheet so I can read the motion, the voting sheet. Direct the CEO to present options offline. That is okay. That's what Councillor Haggerty thought would be a good idea to include into the motion, I believe. Direct the CEO to report all submissions to the council. I think that should be all submissions to the committee.
Just on
and
that,
did we want a trial period for this?
No, let's go with it all the way.
I mean,
But first of all, let's correct number 3. Let's correct number 3, Madam Mayor.
I agree that you should turn off. There are some cases that you intuitively, I suppose.
There's somebody talking in the background.
Where you turn off comments or because.
Someone please mute. Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
I seriously got to go check on my baby. Can I be back in like 5 minutes? I want to vote on this. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
So my question is, does that include everything that Councillor Haggerty said? Because I can't remember, it was a verbal thing, and I can't remember what Councillor Haggerty said.
Yes, so point 1.
Change that again. I think it's supposed to be Councillor Herchiti and Councillor Rhodes.
That's correct.
So number 3 should be nominates Councillor Herchiti.
And Councillor Rhodes.
And Councillor Rhodes. But my question would be, does that include everything that Councillor Haggerty said verbally?
Yes, it does. It's covered in point 1.
It's covered. If those alterations are acceptable to the mover in the motion, then?
Yes.
Councillor Chitty, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I just in relation to one point, yes, I am, Mayor, thanks. But just in relation to one point, and that's being report all submissions to the committee, which is fine. As we know, the committee is only advisory. If then the committee wants something changed, will staff just take that on, or then does it need to go to council for endorsement? I'm just trying to work out a speedy process to ensure that we don't miss deadlines. If there is a submission, for example, due, and then it has to go to the committee, and then it has to go to council because we've changed something, I'm just trying to get some feedback on how that would work. Yes, I've got no issues with it going to the committee, but then will the staff there take directions from the committee on something that council may or may not want to do?
Council, I think you'd have to review the charter, and that would be how you'd sort that out. David Smith has his hand up.
Yes, through the CEO. In relation to the current charter, councillor, what would be required is the recommendations of the committee get reported to the council, and so then the council then resolves either to support, amend or not support the proposed submission. Currently what happens is council staff prepare submissions on state significant development applications or modification applications, and we report that to DPI. What this was, one of the options here was if the committee was to be disbanded, which isn't on the screen now, was to report all of those submissions to council rather than the status quo, which is that council staff submit directly to DPI.
I wonder if we can cover Councillor Herchiti's concern with another point that would say that we're directing the CE to present options offline for the mechanism that allows feedback to be provided to the intermodal. It's related to that. If there is a situation where there is a legality issue that needs to be dealt with before the next council meeting, can she also provide options of ways that that could be addressed?
I'm just looking at the motion, Councillor.
And also, after 1, new point 2, direct the CEO to present options offline for a mechanism that allows urgent legal matters to be dealt with in line to meet legal deadlines. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, councillor, but I think it's preempting a whole range of things by that statement. But yes, it makes sense.
Councillor Chitty, would you be interested in?
If we're going down, thanks, councillor, through you, Chair. If we're going down the line of staying with the status quo, is it just easier to nominate myself and Councillor Rhodes to the committee, and then during that committee we'll work out ways to, have a discussion and then present back to council on a better way forward. So it might just be easier to keep point 4, and we'll have those discussions in the intermodal. That way it doesn't mix it up. Thoughts?
Councillor, I think that's the wise move.
All right, so if councillors are happy, we just go with point 4, and then we'll have our discussion so that nothing's missed or nothing's done, unintentionally incorrectly, to ensure the best outcome.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? All right, we'll put the sheet up, please.
So we're just staying with point 4, is that correct, Mayor? Through you?
Yes. There's we'll ask for everything to be deleted, and point 4 becomes point 1, doesn't it? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, can we have the voting sheet, please? Thank you. I'm voting against. Thank you. Councillor Ayard?
Me too.
Councillor, the deputy head's both against. Okay. Councillor Ayard?
Yeah. So which one are we voting on? I'm confused. So there was 2 when I.
No, there's only one. There's only one, councillor.
Okay.
And one is it's been amended to just one, nominates Councillor Chitty and Councillor Rose to intermodal.
Okay, I'm for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blute.
Mayor, Councillor Blute.
Councillor Chitty, he's voting for it, so I assume he's voting. Councillor Did's voting seconded, so he's probably voting for it. Councillor Haggerty.
For.
Okay. Councillor Hull.
For.
Councillor Calienda.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Shelton.
Against, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Against, and Councillor Rhodes for. Thank you. I declare that particular motion carried. The next item's on page 107.
Just a question, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, certainly.
Just in relation to, through you to the relevant officer, in relation to point 2 where we're not proceeding with the study, says the state government has done the study. I take it, yes, the study is done. Do we have any issues with the study that's done? Can that study be improved? Have they missed anything in relation to what they've come up with?
Mr. Moore, are you able to comment on the content of that study?
Yeah, certainly through the CEO. I don't have the complete study with me, but the study lands on the options that are identified in the attachments to the report there. It labels option 2 as the preferred option. That's the option that relies on the line through Regent's Park. And that is the option that Council earlier resolved to support. So in the sense that it concludes in the way that Council is supportive of, the study has its benefits to Council.
Thank you. And in relation to the other points that were done at the 26th February meeting, which talk about the Bankstown to Liverpool and a few other things for the Metro, did we send those letters? So point 3, lobby for an express service from Liverpool to Bankstown for it to be put into place before 2024?
Through the C. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, go, Mr. Moore.
Oh, through the C. Yes, those letters have all been actioned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got a mover and a seconder?
I'll move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Calienda. Seconder?
I second.
Thank you, Councillor Cunnib. Is there any opposition? I'll put it those in favour, those against, declare it unanimous. The next one is on page 116.
I'll move as per the book, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you,
Caliendo.
Madam Mayor.
Seconded,
And I also commend the staff for the work that they've done in the public arts policy. I think it's a real positive reflection for Liverpool.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. Number 127 is the next recommendation, I believe. Yes. Oops.
I'll move the motion as per the book, Madam Mayor.
I'll second.
Thank you. That's Councillor Caliendo and Councillor Haggerty. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carry unanimously. The next item's on page 132.
I've got a motion for this one, Mayor.
Councillor Haggerty.
So, where's my word? It's essentially it's option B with some other words. So, Council resolves to provide 2019-2020 financial year funding up to $56,000 ex-GST to complete the detailed design for BMX track, and then differs slightly here, rejects any council contribution to the project, then relies on external funding, including but not limited to COVID-19 stimulus and joint funding from Western Sydney Parklands.
Thank you.
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
The total cost of the BMX bike track, it's not 1.2 million, is it? It's twice that.
Dr. Jackson, are you able to speak to the costings there for this specific bike track?
Through the CEO, on page 134, right at the bottom of the page, you'll see there that it states that the total cost of the BMX facility would be $4,096,000. The attraction of the option that we have presented is that it leverages significantly the amount of additional money that would come from the Western Sydney Parklands Trust over and above Council's contribution. And, you know, you'll see there it's essentially $3 for every dollar that Council would contribute.
So, thank you, Eddie, but what are you asking for Council to contribute in option A in total? Either by Council paying for it themselves or by COVID-19 stimulus package?
Through the CEO, option A sets out that Council would fund up to the full amount of 1.224 million, plus the 56,000 for the design study, and that Council would bear that itself. And then the other options set out variations of a Council contribution and trying to source funds from the COVID stimulus package or other grant opportunities that may arise. Or the option is also that you do not think that the timing is right to fund this particular initiative.
Well, don't get me wrong. I think that the BMX track would be a wonderful contribution to the Liverpool economy. And I thought it was 3 million. I thought 3 million, yeah, it's a fair price. 4 million's beginning to scare me a little bit. And what happens if we don't contribute any more than what Councillor Haggerty has suggested in his motion?
Through the CEO, essentially option B proposes that we fund the design element at 56,000 during this financial year. and then seek to pursue other, through the COVID-19 stimulus package or other grant opportunities, the required amount at a future time. The difficulty, the downside of that option is that there's no guarantee that we would actually receive the full amount that we would need, and therefore lose, in terms of providing certainty for the development to go ahead, we would lose the potential economies of scale that are a significant element of this proposal.
We would lose the economy of scale.
Through the CEO, that's correct. For example, what we mean by that is that as part of the original Parklands Trust proposal for the Wild Bike Park, that will require significant earth movement, earthworks. If the BMX proposal is to be supported, instead of removing the earthworks from the site, the earth would be moved to construct and provide the foundations for the BMX track, and that in itself would represent a significant saving in terms of the actual construction and earthworks costs.
And what would be your opinion of Councillor Haggerty's motion?
Could I, through the CEO, could I ask for a repeat of that motion? There was some alteration to the original motion.
The motion reads, resolves to provide 2019-2020 financial year funding up to $56,000 excluding GST to complete a detailed design work for the BMX track, rejects any council contribution to the project, then relies on external funding including but not limited to COVID-19 stimulus and joint funding from the Western Sydney Parklands.
Madam Mayor, can I say something, Councillor Hadid?
Yes, I see your hand up, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well, can I suggest something to Councillor Haggerty? I'm quite happy to second his motion. But if we can delete or reject any council contribution to the project, and go ahead with the rest of it, then relies on external funding, blah, 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 blah. So then in the future, if we fail to get any contribution from the state government or federal government, whoever, so then we can reconsider our decision.
Yep, I'm happy to accept that. Thanks, Councillor Hadid.
Thank you. I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion?
No, sorry, what's the motion now?
The motion is resolves to provide 2019 to 2020 financial year funding up to $56,000 ex-GST to complete the detailed design work for the BMX track, then relies on external funding including but not limited to COVID-19 stimulus and joint funding from the Western Sydney Parklands.
I'll speak against once you're ready, Mayor, please.
Well, off you go, Councillor.
I'll speak against it on a few different points. Firstly, if we are going with that resolution, really we're taking a punt of $56,000 of ratepayer money, not knowing if we're going to achieve an outcome. So we may well spend $56,000, do designs, do plans, do everything with zero return. So we're really taking a punt on $56,000, and it could pay off with, to the tune of $1.2 odd million in a BMX track. But I think the 2 points of concern I've got with this proposal, while it was a great proposal they put forward to us in that briefing, and I thank everyone involved in it. Point one is it's Western Sydney Parklands, funded by, you would take it, the state government, on their lands. All we've got so far, yes, there's a dog park in West Hoxton or whatnot that attracts some people there. I don't believe we contributed anything to that, but I stand to be corrected. So far, all we've got in Liverpool, from what I understand, is a commercial development on the corner of Hoxton, Cow Pasture Road and Bringelly Road, which generates an income for the park, and that's great. If the Parklands think this is a fantastic idea and a great idea, and it is, I believe the Parklands should be funding this completely from start to go. to end. Sorry. Now, the other concern that I do have, the BMX track currently is in the 2168 area, and it's not only used for corporate and for the clubs, it's being used by that community. People in that community, the kids, the young ones in that community, ride their bike, which is in close proximity to the current location, which is closed. I know we've got some issues there, but when it was open and provided for by council or by the partner that we had in it, it was easily accessible by that community in that area. What we are now doing and saying to that community, from what the way I see it, is we're going to fund partially or fully a BMX track somewhere else, and it's going to be very hard for you to get to. Western Sydney Parklands is big enough. They've got plans into the future of what they want to do in that parkland. I don't support putting any funds to it, especially when it takes away from a facility that was provided for the local residents and those around it in our council area. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, Madam Mayor, in this regard, can we add to the motion the comment I have made? If we fail to get any grant from the state government or federal government, then the council can proceed with the funding of this project.
So number 2, if we fail to get any grant from state or federal government, council considers funding this piece of infrastructure from its budget.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Haggerty, are you happy with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly, councillor.
I note that this is a international track. It's certainly capable if the Olympics ever come to, or if Olympics are ever held again and they come to Sydney. I presume the BMX track would be utilised for the Olympics. We've got also in the Western Sydney Parklands the equine centre that was used for the Olympics, the Olympic Equine Centre. Who built that?
Oh, I'd have to take that on notice and get that information back for you, councillor.
Wasn't Fairfield Council?
It was probably built by the Olympic Authority. We got the shooting and Fairfield got the horses.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Aird, you have your hand up.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to ask the mover and the seconder if they'd be happy to add another point to that motion. Just with regard to the 2168, the bike track that's already there and is no longer going to be in use, could we have something in there? I mean, look, I haven't come up with wording or anything, but could we have something in there just to give a BMX bike track back to that community in the 2168, because they are quite isolated. I don't think they're going to go to Western Sydney Parkland. So something local, also in light of what Councillor Hachidi mentioned earlier. So could we have something in there where council could kind of start to initiate that and maybe find locations in the 2168, and then maybe we could consider it in the next budget that comes before council?
My understanding was that the bike club came to council with the proposal in the parkland. Is that correct?
Dr. Jackson, can you talk to that, please?
Through the CEO, as you're aware, the Powell Park facility became problematic in terms of asbestos contamination. We have been aware of and conscious of the fact that there was no immediate replacement for that track at the time. That has weighed heavily in terms of our consideration about advancing proposals as a report documents. We thought that the political appetite for further investment in that area would be low, given the history of that particular facility. When this became an option, we felt that given the leverage, the economic and the tourism potential of the facility, that it merited being brought to council for consideration. At the minute, there are no plans to reinstate the Powell Park track, and That said, our customer surveys demonstrate that there is a high level of interest in BMX riding within the Liverpool LGA. It is referenced within our recreation and open space strategies, and hence bringing forward the proposal. But we fully understand the financial constraints on council at this time.
Thank you. The mover and seconder, are they happy for what Councillor Ayad is suggesting to be incorporated into their motion?
Yeah,
well, I'd like an answer to my question first. So how did we find out about this proposal? Was it brought to us by the BMX Club or Parklands? My understanding was that the BMX Club sort of were the ones that, I guess, chaperoned council to have a chat with Parklands Trust about this being a potential project. Is that correct?
Through the CEO, my apologies, Councillor. The order was that through our discussions with Western Sydney Parklands Trust, we became aware of their plans to move the bike track. It was at that point that we held discussions with the BMX Club. They thought it was a great idea, a great opportunity, and therefore we commenced in good faith those exploratory conversations.
Okay. Yeah. So the BMX Club are fully supportive of this. All right. So I now can't remember what Councillor Ayad's suggestion was.
Councillor Ayad's looking at possibly a BMX track in the 2168 area.
So I really want to just, through the chair, if I may, call on council to identify an area, maybe a parkland in the 2168 that would be suitable for a BMX track and the costs involved in that.
Yeah, I'm happy with it as a seconder.
Councillor, can I just clarify, that would be coming back to council, obviously, because there's financial implications in relation to that. So
that would be the intention, but just to get the ball rolling, because the 2168 now is no longer going to have the BMX track there, and the Western Sydney Parklands is quite a hike, I must say, to get there. So just something local for the kids there.
What if we
through the mayor?
Yes, Councillor Rhodes.
I add that should be a motion by itself. You're just confusing the issue. This is about the BMX bike track. I think it would be better served if that was a motion put to council on its own merits, not in this.
Well, thank you, Councillor, for chairing the meeting. I think the reality is that I have no problem, given the mover and the seconder are happy to have that included. People can vote for it or against it. Now, Councillor...
Can I just make one suggestion? Sorry, I haven't agreed to it, but can we, rather than a separate point 3, can we put it at the end of 2 and with an or? So if we fail to get any state money, we consider funding or we investigate.
Yep. That's a good way. That's a good compromise. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hadid, you had your hand up?
No, I think Councillor Hachidi.
No, yes, you both now. Thank you. Councillor Hachidi, you better put your hand down, Councillor Hadid.
Yeah, Mayor, sorry, can I just now get clarification on this motion? So we're still spending 56,000.
Yeah.
If the funding then doesn't come through for the parklands, council then still has the option to say no, but we still want to do it in the 2168 area?
It's another proposition if we don't proceed with the Western Sydney Parkland.
Okay, but that'll come back to council and
has to, because there's costs involved.
Yep, so council, you can either do this or let's stick with our 2168 area.
We'll see what happens, I think.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else with hands up?
Madam Mayor, can I just clarify to the councillors? My intention was actually to do both. That was the intention. So as the motion is worded now, if the funding does come through and we do go ahead with the Western Sydney Parklands, which would be wonderful, can council, as this stands, as this is written, can council still investigate the 2168 area?
I'd say no, councillor, the way it's written, to be frank. But you'd have to ask the mover and the seconder, which are they happy to have that intent in their motion?
Okay. Well,
so, Councillor Haggerty, are you happy to have that intent in your motion?
Have a mouthful of biscuits, but
yeah,
I think there's only room for one BMX track in Liverpool.
Yeah, okay.
Liverpool is very big, Councillor Haggerty.
Okay,
I'm well aware of that. There's a map up here on my desk.
Okay, look, I think we've got the gist of this, and I understand your sentiments, Councillor. Councillor Haggerty has changed your suggestion into what it is now, so we have a fallback position if the other one doesn't go ahead.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor, for that, and thank you to the councillors. Look, I'm happy with that, and I mean, another motion can always be put up for 216.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly right. Okay, I would like my voting sheet now, please. Coming. There we go. I'm voting for. Councillor Ed?
I'm for.
Yes. Councillor Balut? Councillor Hachidi?
For.
Councillor Hadid?
I second it.
Yeah, you're definitely for. Councillor Haggerty?
For.
For. Councillor Hall?
For.
Councillor Calienda?
For, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Canib, Deputy Mayor Canib?
All for, Miss.
Councillor Rhodes?
Yeah, definitely for it.
And Councillor Shelton?
Yeah, for. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Balut? He might have popped out for a moment. So given he's not voting, he's a vote against. You have to change that, I'm sorry. Thank you. I declare the motion carried.
For, Madam Mayor.
You're for. You're back. Okay, so that's unanimous. Good. The next item is on page 144.
Move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton.
Madam Mayor, I've got some questions.
Hold on, we'll get a seconder first.
Second.
I will second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunny beat you to it. Thank you. What are your questions, Councillor Rhodes?
Madam Mayor, I'm hearing disturbing things from the community about the sports clubs in trouble because of COVID. In one, retaining their participating teams, and two, securing corporate sponsorships from businesses that are no longer able to support them as they once did because of the coronavirus and stuff like that. I'm not against these grants whatsoever, but I was wondering if council could provide a report back, possibly to the July meeting, that can account for the sporting clubs and give a general health check telling us the members prior to Corona and now, and also a report on their financial status.
Councillor, I think can I just stop you there? Some of that information may be overreaching our role. I think maybe the best way to do this would be to have a briefing from the staff who actually work with the sporting clubs in the area, and they could give you a full briefing with regards to some of those issues, because I imagine there are problems in every activity that's happening in our local government area. But I would feel that it'd be more comfortable and fitting to have that sort of information as a briefing, yeah. And I think
excellent advice. Do I need a motion to do that?
No, I think we could actually request that of the CEO and just say, could we have a briefing on the status of the local sports clubs and how are they coping and etc. And I think
I'm happy to add that to an agenda. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other discussion? Any opposition?
Madam Mayor, I'm not opposition. I just commend the diversity of all the applicants, particularly at the present time, representing such a wide range of sports, as it were.
And I also note that a lot of it's for equipment and things too, which is going to be sorely needed, hopefully, in a future date.
Yeah, very positive.
Given there's no opposition, I'll put it as being unanimous. The next item's on page 150.
Move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I have some questions, Madam Mayor.
I'll just get a seconder.
I second this.
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor beat you again, Councillor Calenda. Okay, what are your questions? Councillor Rhodes?
Okay, Madam Mayor, does the night patrol van only operate in the Liverpool LGA?
Dr. Jackson, do you have the details of that?
Through the CEO, the request for this particular funding relates entirely to the Liverpool LGA. Vinnie's operate a number of night patrols on a broad range of geographic areas, but this is specific to the Liverpool LGA.
Thank you. And the number of people that we can account for that we know are people living on the streets who would be the people most in benefit of this service. Eddie, am I right in saying that it was approximately 20 people to the best of our knowledge?
Through the CEO, numbers varied throughout the period. They have remained low, primarily because of the success of the partnership between Council and the Department for Communities and Justice and their very proactive approach to finding additional accommodation for homeless people. In terms of this particular, the provision of the night patrol, that also includes not only the homeless, but also people who suffer food poverty and who are struggling to make ends meet. And those numbers are significantly higher. We estimate that across the LGA, our service provision reaches some 1,400 people per week. That includes
the patrol van service, is that right?
The patrol van service plus others like the Exodus Foundation with the food trucks and other service providers through hampers, for example.
So you mentioned there that there are different associations and charities that are also doing a great deal in assisting these people. In your opinion, what would be the opportunity for this being providing a service that is already well catered for?
Can I answer that, please, with Riga as the chair? This has been a special program that actually does the streets in the evening and has parks that they actually know in the area where they will be at a certain time. And at that time, folk come out and fed, and they might have a cup of tea and some light refreshments, but they actually do receive nourishment. And it's been going on for quite some time in the local area. It's become a very necessary thing for many people, especially those that are living literally on the breadline, and for those who are homeless as well, or who are actually rough sleepers. So there's always a lineup with these particular vans, and there's only one van, I believe, that does the local area, but it's on different nights and at different times. I might be incorrect, but they might have two vans now, but they used to have one. And it is very popular, and folk actually know usually where it'll be and at what time. So it's not doubling up, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And how long has it been operating for in the Liverpool area?
Oh, some years.
And is this the first time they've applied for a grant?
To be honest with you, I can't recall them asking for money before, no. I might be incorrect in that. Dr. Jackson might actually have better.
I think we'd have to take that on notice and just check back through the last few years.
I have to say, because I know the service and have referred people to it, I have to say, from my recollection, it's the first time they've applied.
It doesn't ring a bell to me, and I'm usually pretty familiar with all the grant applicants.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any opposition?
Just a question, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, what is your question?
Thanks. In relation to this, obviously we need to give a hand where it's needed. In previous years, other organisations have come forward to help in that area and deliver this service. And if I remember correctly, and I'm happy to search through my emails, we were told that there's a lot of organisations that provide these services, and really there's no more need for this. What's changed?
Dr. Jackson, are you able to speak to that question?
Through the CEO, the demand for this type of service has actually increased over the COVID period rather than decreased. There are 6 providers of services like this. In the case of St Vincent de Paul, their funding generally comes from their charity shops, many of which have been closed over that period, hence the application for funding for this particular service. It's difficult to predict what the demand will be as we move forward, because people who were previously in work or in businesses may, as we come out of this period, the numbers may actually increase rather than decrease. So it's not a question of duplication or excess provision. It's something that we will obviously carefully monitor, but at the minute we've been very content with the coverage that Council has been involved in providing, along with all the other partners from state government and from the NGO sector. We're responding to identified needs within and across the community. It's a much needed service.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I totally agree and happy to support helping those in need. I was just trying to get to, other organisations previously have said we're happy to help, and we've pretty much said we've got heaps of them. So we didn't take that help on. In relation to this service, I know the community kitchen, or the community hub, which this council supports truly. Have they reached out? Which service, where do more people go to? Will they go to this? Will they go to the hub? Who needs the hand here?
Well, can I just again interject, Councillor? This particular one specialises in the evening and night, where the hub is actually during the day and at lunchtime. So it's a different meal time, inverted commas. So, and it's mobile, where the hub isn't mobile. So people have to attend those particular facilities to get a meal. This one actually goes out into the different, into the LGA, into different suburbs. And that's where people get the meal. They get the meal where they're living.
Thank you, Mayor, for that. And I just want to, yes, fully supportive of this. Don't think that I'm trying to take anything away from here. But we've got, 20, 50, 100 people or 200 people, 500, and it's got to grow depending on what happens. And we've got 6 providers. It's just about being, equally sharing that out to all those people that actually help our community.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yes.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, through the CEO, could I just add for the information of councillors? The community hub actually had to close several weeks ago. The volunteers on which they rely for their own health and safety situations they had to close the kitchen. We were successful in persuading Bill Cruz and the Exodus Foundation to come into and run the food truck rather than the community hub. So if you go up there 7 days a week, 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. The Exodus Foundation provide a food truck. They also cover Warwick Farm and they also cover Miller. So a lot of the service providers have experienced difficulty because of health reasons or financial reasons. We've been able to bring other providers in to complement that provision. And it's just a point of information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that information, Eddie. Through the chair, Madam Mayor, can I just ask him another question on that, just for clarification?
Yes, Councillor.
So, Eddie, that van that you said that you were successful in bringing in, and congratulations and well done for doing that. I wasn't aware that the hub had closed down. That also is not a duplication of this. Has that one now ceased and this one will be taking it up, or what's the difference between this one and the one you just told us about?
Well, through the CEO, as the Mayor has already indicated, what we have done with all of the service providers is to bring everybody together to identify who does what when, to ensure that there is provision for vulnerable people 7 days a week across the LGA. So everyone knows what everyone else is doing, where they're doing it, and when they are doing it. So it has been an integrated and comprehensive response, and there have been great partnerships forged through that experience. There's no duplication, and such is the level of demand that more services could actually be provided.
And this service is every day for how many weeks?
It's in the evening.
Through the CEO, I think it's 5 days per week.
Yeah.
For a total of 10 weeks.
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie.
Okay, any other discussion? Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. We'll now have a break until 5 minutes past 8. All right, the next on the agenda is on page 153.
Move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll second, Madam.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against. Hello.
I'm very sorry, that's Simon.
That's all right. I'm trying to keep our television down. Or we may all join Star Wars. Okay.
Madam Mayor, Mayor.
Yes.
I wonder if Council would recommend that we do anything about our investments, considering, you know, I think you said by the end of this financial year, we're going to be 50 million in debt. Or not in debt, but the COVID is going to cost us $50 million. I was just wondering if Council had any recommendations about our particular situation and if we should be doing something with the investment.
Councillor, I'm very conscious that these issues were raised at the briefing. I think you were present from memory. But if Vishwa's here, I'm sure he can comment. The
Mr. Nardan, are you able to make comment on our investments in relation to our current investment policy?
To the CEO, the 50 million overall decrease in revenue we talked about is basically covers next year's period as well. So as of now, we are working closely with our investment advisors. We are keeping enough reserves to meet the liquidity requirements to pay for the capital works and operating expenses. So as of now, and also, I mean, initially when the COVID hit, there was a dip in our investments that has actually fortunately picked up, and we are almost close to pre-COVID situation. So the market, again, the market is sensitive, so we're having a close look at it. And as of now, there is no indication that we need to do anything about it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was in the middle of moving it, so I'll move it. Those for, those against, going to declare it unanimous. Next item's on page 164.
Just a question through you, Mayor, if I may.
Yep.
Just in relation to, and I'm very supportive of reducing red tape. I'm very conscious, though, of the role of a councillor and the boundaries in relation to policies and then procedures. So in general, as a representative of the community, if we keep passing these policies over to procedures, what's the procedure then to find out about the procedure so that I can get back to my constituents?
Councillors, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind me speaking.
No, go ahead.
In relation to these two specific policies, they are essentially superseded by the EPA Act, so they have a redundancy, therefore, as a consequence. In relation to the Register of Policies Procedures, councillors are welcome to view any of the procedures. That's part of your capacity to make good decisions. So we can certainly provide a list of any of the procedures and then access to any of them that councillors wish to review.
All right, just that I did ask a question in a session in relation to the policy or procedure to issuing orders and proposed orders, and thank you, I did get a response, and the response was yes, we do have a procedure in place, but then I didn't know if I could then, don't want to cross any lines, request to see that procedure?
Yes, Councillor. Councillors are entitled to request any information that will help them make good decisions. Obviously, there's some elements that councillors cannot be privy to due to privacy regulations, but absolutely, the procedures don't fall under that category in any way whatsoever, and councillors are entitled to request those. And if we haven't made them easily accessible to you, I'm happy to take that on notice and look at a way that we can make sure you can link to them more easily.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We need a mover and a seconder.
Before you do that, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
I have some questions on the PA system one.
Yep.
Removing that policy. I looked at the information presented there, and where council is saying that the EPA policy takes that into consideration. I respectfully suggest that that's not correct. The Act has not changed since 1997, and this was the very reason we put that policy up, because the existing Act did not take into consideration council's ability to be able to shut down or regulate public address systems on council land. That is nowhere in any of that legislation, and that is the reason why the last time this was suggested that we remove this policy, we voted against it, and I intend to do so this time as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Can we have a mover and a seconder? Nobody's moving, no one's seconding. That particular recommendation lapses. Moving on to the next item, which is on page 174.
Just some questions, if I can, Mayor, when you're ready, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. And I know this report, and if we just go to, pages 181 onwards, the heading is operating budget adjustments or budget adjustments, consolidated operating and a few other headings. But from the 1st of July 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. So I suppose the first question is, this will then be a real accurate point in time as of the 31st of March. Is that what we're reporting here?
This is the third quarter budget review. The forecasting is the best possible estimate. I'll ask Mr Nadan to speak at more detail about that.
Sorry, just in relation to that before he does, if you don't mind, Chair, through to the CEO.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, this says to the 31st of March 2020. So are these figures then not just till the 31st of March?
This is the third quarter budget. So what it does is reflect where we think the budget will be based on the information we've had from the last 9 months. I'll ask Mr Nadan to speak to that. I've never pretended to be a CFO. Mr Nadan, will you speak further to that?
To the CEO, you're right, Kirsten. The third quarter budget review that we present is we look at the actuals for the 9 months ended 31st of March, and then it takes we are probably at the end of the second month now, so we have looked at the numbers and gathered the intelligence, business intelligence, and how our forecast will look. So I can safely say so this captures all the information that we have gathered by, say, end of April. And then we are forecasting this will be the result at 30th June 2020.
All right, so it's just the wording then. So it's not a March review, it's then really an end of April review.
Yeah, but technically it's a quarter 3 budget review.
All right.
But we have captured everything that was known to us by end of April.
All right, so can I, if I can through you, Chair, just ask a few questions on some of the points? And I've just picked a few randomly. In relation to, on page 184, 1, 2, 3, the fourth or fifth one down from the bottom says reduction in revenue from section 10.7 certificates. This is a council endorsed initiative at its extraordinary meeting on the 16th of April. Can I, and sorry, I do apologise if I've missed something that I've passed or been part of, But did we do any initiatives for 10.7 certificates?
To the CEO, no, I think it's just a typo error.
All right. So, and I don't mean to be painful to you.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
So, but due to COVID, we are expecting there will be $70,000 downward in revenue. But it's not a council endorsed initiative. It's just the nature of the business due to COVID.
Can I then, and I don't want to point them all out, just in relation to this report, and it's important that obviously, yes, if it's just a typo, it's a typo. But there's a few others across the page that talk about subdivision linen plans, and that was apparently a council endorsed initiative. There was a road closure applications, that was council endorsed initiatives. And I apologise for the lateness in coming to you, Vishwa. I don't mean to be, doing it without giving you notice, but it's just been really busy and trying to read all these reports. And then over the page, the design excellence panel. I mean, there's a few. I don't have an issue. If we've got issues with revenue coming in, that's fine. But just to understand what caused that. Was it COVID? Was it council? Or was it just because, things are slowed down a bit?
Through the CEO, without commenting on individual cases pointed out, I think generally it's due to COVID situation and the revenue is going down. And that extra comment that's included there as council endorsed initiative is not correct. It's just a typo.
Thank you. Thanks, Vish.
Any other discussion or questions?
Not strictly in relation to the March review, but what impact will the federal government's recent announcement in regards to local governments have? So the 500 mil and bringing forward the financial assistance grants, what will that have? What impact will that have on the budget?
Through the CEO, the financial assistance package, promoted has been as part of the stimulus package is probably not right. It's normal practice over the past 3 years. We have been receiving 6 months of the following year's financial assistance grants in advance. We've actually received next year's today. So, and that was one of the budget assumptions if in Q3 budget review, that's one of the assumptions. If that doesn't come through, we'll have a huge deficit. So that has come through actually.
Okay, so yeah, every year with the financial assistance grant, they give 50% up front. They've done that every other year, and that's all that announcement was?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We had always budgeted for that, Councillor. That's been the position for the last 3-4 years. So that's been reflected in the budgets you've seen in the past.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions?
Madam Mayor, I've got a couple, if I may.
Yes, Councillor.
Just in relation to the approximates on page 176 of the agenda, the losses due to COVID, where you've got those figures in the general business, the savings due to COVID, the general business and capital budget. Do those figures include the business grants that were discussed earlier tonight in Negro 08?
Through the CEO, what we indicated that these business resilience grants will be funded from current savings within the operating budget.
Okay, thank you. And I was wondering, you know our video conferencing, is that more cost effective to council than the actual physical meetings? And is there savings in doing video conferencing?
I'll speak to that if you like, Councillor. As always for large meetings, the most significant costs are staffing costs. However, there are some cost savings associated with catering that none of us are receiving at this point in time, much to, I think, all our regret that we're not eating Frederica's wonderful food. So there are cost savings, but they wouldn't be enormously material. The benefits go both ways. There's some benefits to video conferencing. We don't have to do catering, for instance, not that we'd have to do that if council resolved not to, but the staff costs remain the same.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Is there any opposition? We have
Yes,
a
Mayor, I'll
mover.
be voting against.
Okay, well, you can do that, but I've got to get a mover and a seconder first. Can we have a mover and a seconder, please?
Move that way.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'm going to put it.
Can I just ask a question to Councillor Hachiti as to why he's going to vote against it?
Because it's my democratic right to vote against, Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like to remind councillors that this is a proper meeting. It's constituted properly. It is being taped, and that you are to make decisions on the information that's presented to you. I'd like to.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was hoping for further information that might have educated me further.
Well, you are to make a decision on the information before you, councillor. Now I'm going to put it up. We need our little sheet, I think, at this point, please. Thank you for devising the sheet. I'm voting for. Councillor Howard. We'll come back. Councillor Balut.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hadid.
Against.
Councillor Haggerty.
For.
Councillor Hull.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Caliander.
For.
Deputy Mayor Councillor Canib. Councillor Rhodes.
I will go against.
Councillor Shelton.
Madam Mayor, but I'm going to vote for.
Councillor Howard, you've got your hand up.
Against.
Against. Thank you.
Councillor Canib for.
Yes, I know you're for. Thank you. We get everybody now? Yep, I think we do. Okay, the resolution has been lost. Next one is on page 209.
208. I have a motion, Madam Mayor.
For 209?
That's the air quality one?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I have a motion.
What is the motion, councillor?
I'm sorry I didn't get it in time, but it is. 1, provides a further report for the July 2020 council meeting. 1, on options of incorporating conditions of consent that incorporate air quality or conditions of consent for air quality monitoring to those industries considered capable of causing environmental effects on surrounding air quality. 2, part 2 actually, investigate the possibility of applying similar conditions on existing industries retrospectively. And 3, or part 3, if the above are not possible, investigate alternative means of addressing negative air quality conditions within the Liverpool LGA. So it should be one motion with 3 parts.
4 parts.
Madam Mayor, I have a question about point 3 of Councillor Hull's motion.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, point 2 and 3, I guess. Is that legal?
I'm just reviewing point 2. Councillors can't, under changes to the legislation, determine DAs or what goes into DAs, and I have some concerns about them directing conditions of consent. That would be a interference in the DA process. So I think I would need to get some legal advice about that before I could determine whether this was lawful or not.
Option one, part one should say consent for air quality monitoring devices for those industries capable of detrimental effects on surrounding air quality. I'm happy to speak to it.
Go ahead, Councillor.
I'll second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I've done a little bit of checking and I actually spoke to Michael Sengowski, who's the manager for City Environment, about this, and Michael was going to do some more investigating. I understand that the EPA can actually do this. The EPA can insist that industries such as resource recovery and recycling industries install air quality monitoring devices at their cost and provide data to the EPA that they analyse. And that is part of their licensing conditions for the EPA. Now, I know as Council can also condition DAs to incorporate those sorts of devices to do that. Now, I'm not absolutely certain, and that's what I wanted to find out, and hence I've left it so that we can get further information for July 2020. We all know that the problems in our LGA are caused mainly by those industries that do resource recovery, such as grinding up concrete, asphalt, road bases and so on, and not really, in my humble opinion, not doing a good job of ensuring that the dust and the particles that are allowed to go into the air, they do their very best to prevent that from happening. Sadly, our two monitoring stations in the Liverpool LGA, one is at Rose Street, the other one is at Bringelly. Neither of those two stations are actually capable of recording air quality dust particles in the 10 micrometre area so far away from the monitoring devices. In other words, we've got the one at Rose Street. If 5 kilometres away from there, we have resource recovery operations that grind concrete, building materials and so on into dust and do whatever they do with it, process it and recover it. There is no way of knowing whether or not these companies are operating within their conditions of consent. And it has been obvious in many instances, particularly closer to the Hoxton Park area, where we have substantial amounts of dust particles settling on vehicles, on roofs and so on. And over a number of years, that is, in some instances, is up to 2 centimetres deep, 20 millimetres deep. That's how much has been deposited in our area. And the EPA doesn't want to know about it. Unless we've got complaints to them, they're not really interested. You really have to be able to prove that. And that's where the problem is. We could put portable monitoring devices around the place, but the sad thing is that unless you can prove exactly where those particles are coming from, it's a very, very expensive process and difficult to prove. That's what the EPA has said. So I'm suggesting that if we can, under our conditions of consent, incorporate those operations to ensure that they have an air quality monitoring device there that records the data and council or anybody else has access to whenever it's needed. That's what I'm suggesting.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion?
Just
Madam Mayor,
hold on, Councillor Chitty.
Just taking on board the comments from Councillor Callaghan and the CEO, has we worked anything out in relation to that?
Seeing as the motion asks for a further report back, I can use that time to make sure that whatever goes up is absolutely lawful for you. So I'm happy as that stands, and if there are difficulties, I'll come back to council to advise you on that.
All right, just in relation to that, if I may, Chair, I'm not sure if you want it as a point, but if there's any difficulties in the way that that's worded, can you also investigate the possibility of a policy that's endorsed by council, which then, you know, obviously then people will look at? Is that just another opportunity or another way to achieve the outcome that Councillor Hall is looking for, in case we can't do it that way?
Okay, so point 4 would be, if there is a legal barrier to any parts of this resolution, that council investigate the possibility of a policy which could apply to encapsulate the sentiment of point 1, 2 and 3.
Thank you. If the mover and seconder.
I'm happy with that.
Okay.
I thought I actually covered that in 3.
I think I think that maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor.
You're right. Yeah. I'm afraid I've got Councillor Add's hand up over number 3, so I can't see it. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that would cover that, certainly as direction for us to provide a report back.
So perhaps it should be included to 3 and just say including if there is a legal barrier to the parts of this resolution, just included in number 3.
I think it states that, but...
Well, I think it's overstated rather than understated. Any opposition? I'm going to put it, those in favour, those against, I'm going to declare it unanimous. Okay, the next item is on page 213.
Move that way.
Seconder?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
I've got a question in relation to it, if I may. Without trying to increase anyone's workload, is there a way that we can make this a semi-regular item where it appears in a briefing from time to time without being too specific as to when? It seems this issue does come up from time to time without actually being programmed in. We've been given a comprehensive report tonight. I'm just wondering whether there's some way, without being overly prescriptive and creating a burden, that we get a fairly quick update as to how this issue is looking from time to time.
Councillor Sheldon, what I might suggest is that Mr. Attar, who's just dropped out, we're having some connectivity problems at the moment. As you know, as part of the quarterly budget briefing process, he provides an update on the capital works program, and I think he can provide an overview of what we're doing in the contaminated land space as part of that. It obviously forms part of your broader information provided about the budget, so I don't have any difficulty with that, and I'm sure Mr. Attar wouldn't either.
Grateful, thanks very much.
Thank you, councillors. Is there any opposition? I'm going to put it, those in favour, those against, declare it unanimous. The next item is on page 221.
I have a motion, Madam Mayor.
Yes, councillor, what is your motion?
That council lobbies state government for funds for all councils within Sydney to address the stray cat problem. The reason for the motion, Madam Mayor, is obviously it's a very expensive exercise for Liverpool Council to try and get a control over this particular situation. And the other problem that we've got is that cats don't recognise borders, and unless it was done by all councils, you know, I can't see us getting on top of the situation.
Yep.
Madam Mayor, I have a number of questions about this item?
Yes, Councillor, go ahead.
So in an email that I sent to the CEO earlier this week, I had asked if we are a member of the National Desexing Network. Do we know if that's the case?
Mr. Moore, that's been handed on to you. Are you able to comment on that?
I don't have an answer to that just at the moment, I'm sorry, but I will chase it up and send that through to you, Councillor.
Sure. And just in terms of, I guess, lobbying for, implementation of such a program through the state government, my understanding is that the Office of Local Government conducted a recent review into the Companion Animals Act and recommended some changes. Do we know if those changes have been implemented or what the nature of those changes are?
Mr. Moore?
Can I also take that on notice, Councillor, and provide you with a summary of those changes by email after the meeting?
Sure, because if we're going to go down the lobbying and advocacy route, I believe it's a bit unrealistic for the state government to again review and change the act if they've done so recently. So perhaps there's different measures that we can use within our community, because I believe that there are community sort of, I don't know if you call them community groups or kind of, volunteers who work within the local area to kind of do a version of a trap release neuter program. Have those come across your radar, Mr. Moore?
We've been, in relation to the trap release neuter program, the key outstanding piece of information for us has been the legality of that. There was earlier advice that was included in earlier council reports from the RSPCA that questioned the legality of those programs. So we've obtained legal advice. In fact, it came through just before the meeting tonight. Haven't had time to digest it fully, but a quick glance indicates that it's positive, i.e. It would be legal to conduct a trap neuter release program, and that would apply to both feral cats, those cats that are in the wild, and stray cats, cats that may be domesticated but are not being kept by their keeper. So it seems as though that program is legal. I don't know that there are groups in our local government area that are conducting those programs. Mm-hmm. I can look into that further, but on the basis of a quick look of that legal advice, it seems like it could be a legal program, and perhaps therefore there are volunteer groups that are conducting that business.
Excellent. And I know in the report it mentions a couple of the community education programs that are run by council in terms of responsible pet ownership and that sort of thing. I guess my concern is that those obviously target owned cats, which are part of the stray cat population. The core of the problem lies in the unowned cats, so those who are not claimed by any responsible or not responsible pet owner. So working with whether there are organisations or volunteers out there, perhaps that could be a role for the community reference group that was a part of the motion. Was it the March council meeting in relation to the animal shelter?
February, second one in February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So perhaps that could be something that could be investigated through that process. Now, in terms of whether that requires a formal motion of council, do you have that?
Councillors, I think we can take that on board and feed that through.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other questions or queries?
Yeah, through you, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Chitty.
I'm happy to second Councillor who moved it? Sorry, Councillor Bates' motion. Just a couple of points. One, how is that reference group going? That was the 2nd February meeting to establish that group for the animals.
Ms. Moore, are you able to comment on that?
Yes, through the CEO, the reference group hasn't yet been established. I'll need to get an update on where we're at with putting the group together and provide that to councillors.
Sorry, one more final question, if possible, Madam Mayor.
Yes, certainly.
Does council actually have an urban stray cat management plan?
Not to my knowledge, councillor. I'll double check for you, but I'm usually aware of what our plans are. Let me look into that and I'll get back to you.
Excellent. So if the mover and second are amenable, would that be could that be possibly added to the motion that council work towards an urban stray cat management plan?
Okay by me.
Yeah, I don't have an issue, but if I can continue when you're ready, Mayor.
Oh, apologies, Councillor. I thought you were finished.
No, that's okay. That's okay. All good. We're on.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we have something else, Madam Mayor.
Wait a minute, Councillor Chitty had the call if he wants to finish.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Happy to take on Councillor Caliander's point. And if the mover agrees, a point 3, that I take it the reference group charter, whatever the case may be, needs to come to council for approval. Is that correct? Or endorsement?
If it's a committee of council, then yes, council needs to approve the charter.
All right. Can I have the reference group charter come to council at the next council meeting, please?
Yep, I have no difficulties with that.
Thanks. And then can I speak for the motion if Councillor Rhodes has finished?
Can I add one before you speak?
Well, Councillor Chitty has got the floor still, Councillor Hadid. So just if you wait until he's finished his speech, and then I certainly will ask you to speak, and we have a couple of other hands up. So
thanks.
Councillor.
And I would like to speak for my motion as well, Madam Mayor.
Right, hold on.
Thanks. Just in support of the motion and in particular in point 1, and there were some comments in relation to the trap and release and what the community is seeking, dealing with them a fair bit and speaking with them. The main issue when it comes to cats that they're finding, yes, is those stray cats, mainly in the car parks, in the shopping centres, that obviously gather for food and when they do gather, obviously they breed and then we see more. One good thing or one thing that they would like to see, and yes, we probably need to lobby government for, and I think I heard earlier that we can now capture those cats, is more funding so that we can proactively go out there, catch these cats, de-sex them and then let them back out. We need to try as a whole community, because they don't know boundaries, as Councillor mentioned earlier. If we can get some funding for that, we can put a plan into place to capture them, de-sex them and release them. It may take time, but I think if we start as soon as possible with funding, the sooner we start on this, hopefully the sooner that problem goes away.
Thank you, Councillor Did.
Yeah, well, thanks, Madam Mayor. Well, if we want the council to lobby the state governments, I believe it's a very good idea if we can write to the local government in New South Wales as an umbrella organisation to lobby on behalf of its members. So you can edit this number 4 if you like.
Yeah, well, I would suggest we probably write to everybody. It would be helpful. More in, the more we get, hopefully, some help. Thank you, Councillor Did. Councillor Haggerty?
Yeah, look, I don't know if this is a question or a point, but take it however you want. This is one of the issues that I get quite a bit of complaints about, and you'll know this because I've put up a couple of motions about this, last year. Unlike other issues, say, can you cut the grass? Can you clean the rut? Can you pick up the dump rubbish? Can you get rid of the trolley? This one we don't appear to have a proper solution to. So I just want to reiterate that certainly councillors get it, and I know the community gets it, but this is a serious issue. It's an important issue. It's a problem, and we need to actually, work pretty hard to solve this. And if if we need to, perhaps this includes councillors, directors and staff, perhaps we need to actually go out to some of these neighbourhoods and see how serious the problem is. I'd just like a bit more movement on this. It is serious and it's important, and we really can't let things drag, and we can't have reports coming back going, note this, note that. We actually need some action here.
Mayor, I know I've spoken, but can I make a comment?
Can you hold it until you
yes.
can't? Yes.
Can I speak for the motion?
Actually, the mover gets the right reply. You don't. So, have you got a question, Councillor Chitty?
Yeah, I'll ask a question to Councillor Haggerty, if I can. Yeah.
Through the chair, go right ahead.
Through you, absolutely, through you, Chair. Councillor Haggerty, would you be supportive of council allocating funds to employ a vet on a full-time basis and allow our rangers, if it's possible, or we need to introduce a policy, to capture feral cats, to take them back to the vet, which is employed by council, and for that vet to de-sex them?
Well, I think I added the 2 points in the motion. I can't remember. It was in February about the animal shelter, where we make sure that we have an animal welfare officer that did a whole bunch of things, and certainly I'd be happy for that to be part of their job description. So. What is the? I guess my question there is what is the animal welfare officer at the moment? How many do we have? What do they do? What's their remit? What does their job description look like? And based on the answer to that question, I'd be happy to consider that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any opposition?
Can I speak now for the motion?
Yes, certainly. It's your motion, Councillor. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following all the discussions based around this particular issue, the issue seems to be that council can capture stray animals, particularly from shopping centres. The problem is that they can't go on to private land to capture so-called stray animals. But, it occurred to me that people who live on the property might be interested in a council program of providing traps for them to capture stray animals that are accessing their property. I wonder if council has considered that.
I don't think that's something that has been considered yet, Councillor, but I'm more than happy to take that on notice and to bring that into the considerations as we look at the TNR and legal advice that we've received.
Well, we might just add that and note it in the motion that council consider community cooperation by supplying cat traps to capture stray cats that may venture onto their properties.
The problem with that, Councillor, is once they're captured, you can't do anything with them.
In conjunction with...
Councillor Rhodes, can you just shush for a second, please? Now, listen, I think what you're trying to do will be picked up on point 2, because you're going to be able to look at a lot of strategies. It won't be just one. And in the past, council has helped residents get cat traps, by the way, and that basically they used to get from somewhere else and then give them to the community at large who requested it. Then it was up to them to take the trap somewhere else, which was very awkward. But I think if council's going to work towards an urban stray cat management plan, all those options should be looked at and should be in there. So I think being so prescriptive at this point might actually guide that in a way that you may not want it to be guided, if that makes sense. So
no, Madam Mayor, I just wanted it to be noted because in all of our discussions that we've had so far, no one has mentioned that particular point.
Well, I can tell you council used to do that. So I'm just saying that I don't think that the traps are your answer. I think this might spoil something that you probably will get a lot of support for, because it could come up in point 2. but in a way,
advice, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Because it will actually, if you get a management plan, it will encompass many different things. Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation. Any opposition? All right, I'm going to put it those for, those against. I'm going to declare it unanimous. The next item on the agenda, and she's lost her agenda, which is not very clever, is the committees, starting on page 250.
Unless anyone's got an issue, Mayor, I'm happy to move them as a whole.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm happy with that. Thank you. Councillor Chitty moving as a whole with seconded Councillor Rhodes. Any objections? I'll put it, those in favour, those against, declare it unanimous. And now we're into questions with notice, starting on page 269. Oops.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm good.
You're good. It's good. That's nice. You're good. Next one's on 272.
I'll be a bit specific with this one. Has the sign, just to give you a bit of, steer you in the right direction, the sign on Newbridge Road as you go over the bridge to Bankstown there, was there a sign there? Did it go missing? But otherwise, happy to wait.
Yeah, we'll have to take that on notice. We can probably get the information to you a bit faster and then formally advise it through the answer, but we'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Page 273, Councillor Hall.
I'm happy to wait.
Thank you. Moving on to notices of motion.
I have a presentation, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you reminded me. Well done. What is your presentation? Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I was notified by West Rock, and rather than me take too much of Council's time, I've already supplied that to George. They asked me to present this at tonight's meeting. It is basically advice that West Rock is in support of Council settling a high proportion of humanitarian migrants and asylum seekers. And they included with it a letter to the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, that they seem to be asking the Mayor to sign in support of that. So I present those things to Council and for consideration also with, what is it, NOM 04, isn't it? Yes, NOM 04. And I consider that as I've presented that to Council, and I am the Treasurer of West Rock, I've already declared a pecuniary interest, and I would rather report back the result from Council without me participating in it.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want a formal motion, or are you just happy with that presentation?
I'm happy with that presentation.
Okay.
It's okay.
04. Leave it with us, as they say.
Yeah.
Now, the next item for the agenda is the addendum book, CEO 01, on its complete book. Page, starting the recommendations on page 557.
Can I move a motion, Mayor?
Yes, Councillor, you can.
Thank you. That Council defer this item till the June Council meeting. That's one. Two, I'm not sure if I use the word direct or what I'm after, if I can, in the motion.
Yeah.
It is the CEO to provide a budget review broken down by department. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to the motion.
Happy to second it, Councillor Hadid.
Councillor did seconding. Speak to motion, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. And by no means do I try to be painful, but we know this is an important document, and I understand the issues everyone's faced to prepare this document and get it to Council. Given that we need to put, or I need to put my name to even putting it on exhibition, and again, I understand the constraints that were in place. We did receive this on Monday evening, unless I'm wrong, but that's when I saw it pop into my email. Questions were asked, and then we received some responses late this afternoon and early this morning in relation to some of the questions. And as a councillor who needs to put his name to something, I need more time, I need more information, I need to ask some more questions before I'm comfortable in even putting it out on exhibition. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor, would it be pertinent then to have a point 3 that says that council has another briefing on the budget so that all these issues can be answered and whatevered?
I think, sorry, number 2 was...
Yeah, I understand that's separate to what...
Oh, no, sorry. Actually, I'll take your words instead of mine, yes. So that we direct the CEO to give us a briefing, by department, yes. Yep. Get rid of mine and put your words in there. They sound a bit more than my words, yes.
Okay, so we direct the CEO to provide a further briefing on the budget broken down by department. Yep. And that way we can sit down and, as they say, chew on the fat.
Councillors, can I just ask for clarification, because I don't want to get the staff to do work on something that isn't providing you what you need. By department, I assume you mean by business unit of council, is that correct? Or yes, by division of council?
No, sorry, CEO, yeah, you're correct.
Business unit, fine. I just want to make sure I've got the right words so I can get the team to work on that.
So as I understand it, just so that, and happy to work with you on wording or how you present the briefing. We're currently provided with a budget that's broken down by division or directorate. So the CEO's directorate and then the directors that sit under yourself, each are allocated a budget. Is that?
No, actually, it tends to roll upwards rather than downwards. So when it tends to be by business unit, and then the business unit rolls up into the directorate rather than the directorate be allocated a budget and then that roll down, if that makes sense. Because we've been trying to work towards zero-based budgeting, it is more at the business unit level. So we certainly can provide that information. That's not a problem. I just wanted clarity on exactly what you wanted.
The way I see it, and yes, again, how you present it, is there's the directors that we employ. That obviously we employ the CEO, and the CEO employs the directors. So there's a CEO as a director or as the office, and then the directors under that, and then each director then has a budget. But I take it that director is responsible for everybody underneath themselves. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, but we don't budget by saying, okay, Raj's division has $50 million. What we do is look at each business unit and their needs in that particular given time, and it's the business unit budgets that are set, and then that rolls up. So, and I'm only using Raj as an example because he was the first that popped into my head. He may have 5 business units under him. They will each have a different budget each year, and then that becomes the directorate budget. It's not top down, it's bottom up, if that makes sense.
Okay, so please stop me if I go on in this. So then in that scenario, given that we're using Raj, he would then, or yourself would present, saying, I have 5 business units. This is how much each business unit gets, and this is what they do with it. Is that too much to ask?
That's broadly correct, yes.
Okay.
And at the business unit level, so at the manager and sometimes coordinator level, they are required to work through their budget and make any budget bids for future funding. So it is more bottom up because we are a service organisation rather than top down. The directors aren't given a quantum each year and then told to go and work on it. The finance area works with the business units to work on their particular needs for each financial year.
Yep, I think we're on the same page here then.
Thank you.
Question, are we getting to have as well the numbers of staff or workers in each division?
Yes, we can provide the number of EFT. That's no problem at all.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sounds operational to me, but I have a question.
Yes, Councillor.
When do we have to get this all signed off and ticked off? And because we have a deadline, don't we?
I've just been checking that. We need to get that ticked off by July 31. So if council puts a budget on exhibition at the June council meeting, which off the top of my head is the 26th, we have 28 days, which means as long as it's adopted on July 31st, we will meet our requirements. It's a bit tighter than I probably would have preferred, but nonetheless, we can do it.
Right, thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion? Did you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Chitty?
I think I've said enough, Mayor.
Okay. Any opposition? I'm going to put it, those in favour, those against, I'll declare it unanimous. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the animal shelter. Councillor, could I make a recommendation that we move your motion to be looked at conjunctly with the one in confidential, because there's similarities and overlaps, and yes. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. The next item is on page 277, Hoxton Park Road update.
Yeah, thank you. This is my notice of motion. I'm sure you're all familiar with this issue. We have prosecuted it both on the council floor and in briefings with our good friends at the RMS. We were given assurances that they would take all of this on board, and disappointingly, they've ignored it. They've ignored us. They've ignored the local members of parliament, and most importantly, they've ignored businesses and the community. This is disappointing, I guess, is to say the least. And I guess the point of this motion is to I guess confirm that council is committed to the FAST project. That as part of the city deal, there's provision there for bus transit to and from Liverpool, and this would be the most likely route. World's best practice shows that you have, for effective public transport, you have centre running lines. That means that the traffic doesn't get in the way of the buses or whatever they are, and the buses or whatever they are don't get in the way of the traffic, and people can get to and from good jobs out near the airport, and whether they're going to jobs or whether they're going for a quick holiday to nowhere at the moment. But if they're going to the airport, whether it's for travel or work, they can do that effectively and safely. And it's I guess it's critical to Liverpool making sure it benefits from all the opportunities that both the Aerotropolis and the airport are going to bring to us. And you look at projects like the airport and the Aerotropolis. As I've said here, that they're 100-year projects, they're once-in-a-century projects. We're plagued with projects where, and this is not a red-blue thing. This is governments of both stripes, where we build a 2-lane motorway, and 10 years from now we go, oh, we need to put another lane on the motorway. It's short-sighted. And it ends up costing more in the long run than it does in the short run. Do it properly the first time, and that applies to all the motorways as much as it applies to Hoxton Park Road. I'll leave it at that.
Happy to second the motion.
May I?
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Yes, Councillor Chitty.
Well, Councillor Haggerty and I go back to a meeting, I think it was moved by Councillor Shelton and myself, where we undertake a campaign and be very vocal, and then obviously we received something, so we didn't. Will Councillor Haggerty include that in his motion?
Absolutely. We shouldn't leave petitions and public campaigns to the community. That's something that council can also do, and we should when we need to.
So can we? How would you like? Can you word something up, or?
Council. So, well, an additional point on the end of mine, that council undertake a public awareness campaign. It needs to be a bit stronger than that, doesn't it? That council undertake a public awareness campaign, including a petition or something. Help me out.
I think, thanks, Councillor. It's more than just public awareness. It's a public, we're ticked off with council campaign. And yes, you do mention the red and blue. There's no red and blue here. This is something I believe we should have done a few months ago. And I think we should do it. This is an important project. We get one shot at it. If they're not going to listen, let's go out there and make sure that although they're not listening, we're going to stir it up. It's not about public awareness, it's about public fight, council fight.
Public advocacy.
Yeah, but that's saying we're just advocating and trying to be nice. I don't think we could be nice in this circumstance. I think we just need to get out there, do everything possible, Facebook, Twitter, whatever else, posters, and get them to listen that we're not going to put up with this.
Yeah, look, in normal circumstances, I'd suggest some kind of rally or protest, but it's a bit hard to do that in. And we've got to say socially distant, but.
Well, take out the word awareness, public campaign, including petition.
Social media.
Petitions or any other matters. That would pick everything up.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Is there? I think I'm going to go to the nub of it. Is there any opposition to this? Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. Okay, the next item is on page 280.
That's me again. Thank you, CEO, for your comments. I guess the crux of this one comes is in regards to which I refer to in the background here. There was a modification to the concept plan at Edmondson Park, which was essentially the same as what they put up 12 months ago and got knocked back. Now, legally, that's their right to do it. Good for them. Submissions for that closed today, so it was too late to, I guess, put a nom up. But I understand council has already opposed it. So, parking that issue to one side, the issue in regards to this motion is that the process that came from the department. So, basically, how I found out was that a resident got a letter in the mail, and they alerted me to it. And that was a few days after the submission period had opened. People weren't getting their notifications until 1 week into the 2-week program. So it opened on a Wednesday. They were getting their letter on the second Wednesday, and it closed the Wednesday after that. Now, Australia Post has been quite open that there are delays in mail. Local papers aren't printing, as we're aware. So the point of this is that it's much harder for the community to be notified and aware about major development and the planning projects that are going on in their area. And as we know, whether it's Moorebank, whether it's Middleton Grange, whether it's the CBD, people are quite passionate about this issue, and people want to have a say, and they deserve to have a say. Now, it's hard for them to have a say in this current environment if the papers aren't being printed, if mail's not being delivered on time. So it's up to the department, it's up to council as well. We make decisions in regard to planning to do what we can to make sure that we're doing, I guess, additional things during this time to make sure that we are doing adequate community consultation and making sure people can make submissions on planning projects. For this particular proposal, the only way you could do it was to send a letter via mail, and I've already identified why that's not going to work. If you're getting a letter on the Wednesday, it's probably not going to get back till the next Wednesday. It may or may not get in. And the other way to do it was to email a staff member at DPI. With the previous modification and with previous modifications, you're able to make website submissions. Nice and easy. You jump on, say, I don't like this, I don't want it, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that. So with this particular modification. So all I'm asking for here is that the minister and the department, realise that that they need to step up and do a bit more in regards to informing the community in regards to major developments. It's not good enough for people to be mailed, mail 300 people within the radius of it and expect that that's not going to have an impact, especially when it comes to somewhere like Edmondson Park, where the planning failure that is Edmondson Park doesn't just affect the people in Edmondson Park, it affects everyone that drives there to try and get a car park. So that's the gist of the motion, and I'll stop talking now.
And I will second that motion and speak to the motion.
Thank you. Have we got anybody against it?
I just got some questions.
Well, Mayor. We'll get you to do your questions, then we'll get Councillor Rhodes to do her
Thank you.
speech. Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you, Chair, I just want, and very supportive of the motion, so don't get me wrong here, but were residents able to email a submission in? Did I hear that right? Sorry, you were cracking out, Councillor.
Yes.
All right, so all we're asking for here is to have something on the website so that they can immediately do that?
Yep.
All right, so just in term, and yes, good motion, we'll be supportive of it. Does Council offer that? Through you, Chair.
Mr. Moore, how are members of the public currently able to make submissions on DAs and planning proposals of council?
Through the CEO, it depends. Obviously, letters and emails directly. I don't believe with planning proposals we have a pro forma online for submissions. But with development applications, I believe there is.
All right, so through you, Chair, if I can, will Councillor Haggerty, and yes, supportive of yours, but it's important if we're asking somebody else to do something, would you add in a point that we investigate for us to be able to do that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Look, in navigating the planning site and council's website and what council does on social media, I can tell you our systems are a lot more up to date than the old planning portal that Depot have. So
absolutely agree, and you've picked up a good point. And if we can make it easier for our residents as well, I think that'd be a good thing. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any Councillor Rhodes, you wish to speak to?
Yes, I might, Madam Mayor. I'm grateful for this motion because I mentioned something, I think at the last meeting or the meeting before that in view of the papers not being printed, it's getting harder and harder to be able to communicate with the community in giving them the opportunity to voice their concerns, if they've got them, about developments that are going on within the community. Now, at that particular time, I said that they should extend the time, and it was pointed out to me, well, if we do that, we're going to be delaying DAs or whatever. But I think that what Councillor Haggerty has said here is close to the problems that I had identified and had heard from the community, that there is not enough being done to let people know that, like the Moorebank intermodal one, they've been complaining about that because people are having difficulty knowing that it closes, I think, tonight. And so it's a real problem for the community. And if this is going to help, I think that's a great move by council. And if there's more that we can do, I'd like council to consider that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Is there any opposition? Okay, I'm going to put it, those in favour, those against, declare it unanimous. Next item is Councillor Calienda, page 282.
I'm leaving the room.
You're leaving the room. Okay, turn off your virtual machine.
I'm virtually exiting also.
Virtually exiting. Can I hear your footsteps? Okay. Councillor Calienda?
Do I have to wait any longer for the virtual absentee? No?
No, just go.
Excellent. Look, I think this was covered in part of the letter that was delivered by Councillor Rhodes in the presentation, but also there was a circular from Local Government New South Wales encouraging councils to support the Local Government Mayoral Task Force open letter. And so I think previously this council has discussed the fact that when very vulnerable people are pushed off of being supported, by state or federal governments, we as local government are then left to support those people. And I think, through the course of COVID-19, we've seen definitely that some of the most vulnerable in our community have been impacted, perhaps disproportionately. And signing on to something like this helps to make federal government in particular aware of the impact of some of their measures, and to hopefully make sure that they're able to kind of, what do you call it? Plug some of the gaps that people are falling through. So that would, I'll stop talking there, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other speakers?
Just some questions, Mayor, if I can.
Yes, certainly, Councillor.
Through you to Councillor Caliander or to anyone else.
Yes.
How many people in our LGA are affected by this? Do you have a number?
I'll jump in there just because Dr. Jackson informed me of that this evening. We just got up-to-date information. Dr. Jackson, are you able to provide that?
Through the CEO, we identifying the number of asylum seekers is notoriously difficult because they don't access nor are they recorded as users of many of the services that other new arrivals use. But we have identified this afternoon that within the Liverpool LGA, there are 1,251 asylum seekers. Fairfield and Liverpool tend to attract the majority of new arrivals, and Fairfield will also have a large number, I would imagine.
Sorry, thank you, Doctor. And further question, if I can, Mayor.
Yes, certainly. Go ahead.
So, how have, and sorry, I don't know this answer. How are the asylum seekers living previously or pre-COVID, and what's changed post-COVID? I'm just trying to get an understanding here to see if we can do more or what the go is here with the asylum seekers.
Dr. Jackson, are you able to give some background on that?
Well, I suspect that the vulnerabilities that they've faced previously have been exacerbated by the experience of COVID, the greater demand for services. But I'm happy to take that on notice and get much more information on that.
I'm just trying to work out if they've been kicked out of homes, are they not being provided what they were being provided prior to COVID? Because obviously it says here they didn't have access to Medicare previously. They didn't have a livable income previously. So just trying to gauge what's changed.
Can I just make one point, Madam Mayor, that may sort of help illustrate the situation a bit better? Asylum seekers are much more likely to be in sort of those precarious jobs that were much more likely to have been sort of affected by the shutdown and the COVID regulations. And without that income, asylum seekers are not able to access things like Centrelink and income support and those sorts of things, which would sort of offset that loss of income. So that's kind of one way in which they may have been disproportionately impacted compared to other sections of the population.
Thanks for that. Thanks.
Oh, so I've got a question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor did.
Well, look, to be honest with you, I can't understand, this motion in front of us now. Are we going to support a genuine asylum seekers? Is the application approved by the government and they are let down by the government? Or we are going to support like the asylum seekers or the refugee in general, still in detention center or in the bout or somewhere else? Who we are going to support?
Well, it's a good question, Councillor. Councillor Caliander, do you have an answer?
Well, given that the letter and the sort of the open letter as well as the task force specifically refers to asylum seekers and refugees, and from the numbers quoted by Dr. Jackson just then, they are people that are registered as asylum seekers, and as a refugee welcome zone, Liverpool obviously welcomes a lot of people who come from places where they can't really go back at the moment. So I'm a little bit confused as to sort of the specifics of your question, Councillor. Is that what you want?
To be honest with you, I'm quite happy to support refugee, their application approved by the government, or asylum seekers applications, their application approved by the government, and they released to the community and still suffering, you know, and they need help. But, you know, to support refugee and asylum seekers in general, it's coming by the bout, and the application haven't, you know, been addressed by the government yet. So it's not our job, it's the government job. So I'm quite happy to support asylum seekers and refugee. The application approved by the government, and they need help and support.
I think, Councillor, this particular matter isn't about the ones that are yet to be judged. I think this is about the ones that have had their status already established, and they're living in the community often in a precarious situation, because especially asylum seekers, because they don't have access to Centrelink, and they're often in small paid jobs, which uses a lot of labour. And so when this virus hit, obviously, people would be put off. So they're a bit like the overseas students, which you could argue about as well. But they're here and they're going to our institutions and paying a lot of money, but they've got no money. So it's a very strange and awful situation. But a lot of the ones that are approved, refugees and asylum seekers, often go on and become Australian citizens.
And just one more point, Madam Mayor, to kind of maybe help with Councillor Hadid's point. Often, because these the people who are on these visas have already been assessed and approved to be asylum seekers, they're accessing perhaps local support anyway, but because they're not able to get support from, say, federal or state programs in place, we as local government are bearing the brunt of it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but because they're probably being disproportionately affected by, lack of income and, healthcare costs or whatnot, we want to make sure that they're not being directed away from accessing any of those supports.
I think it's about being a humane community, making sure we don't leave anybody behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reality. Okay, Councillor Ed, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say I genuinely agree with the sentiments that this motion puts forward, and I do agree with Councillor Caliander. And, I urge my fellow councillors to support this in hope that the federal and state governments will do more to help these asylum seekers. Yeah, I do know a lot of them, and every word that Councillor Caliander said and every word that you said, Madam Mayor, in regard to these people are very true words.
Yeah. It's a tough existence.
Yes. I'd be happy to second that. I just noticed there's no seconder. So
Thank you, Councillor. That's very nice. All right. I'm just conscious of the time, and we've all been, I think we're starting to get a bit, well, I am starting to go a bit screen happy. All right. I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. The next item is also in your name, Councillor Caliander, I believe. 285. Wait a minute, we've got to get our people who are virtually, not in the room, virtually back.
I'm virtually opened the door and returned.
As we've got Councillor Rhodes virtually returning.
I'm back.
Good, thank you. Okay, Councillor, you have the next motion as well.
Yes. Madam Mayor, this is just a receive and note of measures that the Southwest Academy of Sport has put in place as a result of restrictions around COVID and the public health kind of impact of it. Given that Council supports the Academy financially, and we also have an ex officio position on their board, I thought it was for the interests of councillors to see what was going on there.
Oh, thank you very much for that. So,
I'm happy to second it with some comments, Mayor.
Yep. Councillor Hachidi seconding. What are your comments, Councillor?
Thanks. Can I just thank firstly Councillor Caliander for bringing this to us. And in her last paragraph, she says thank you to Liverpool. But can we also write a word of thanks to the actual academy? Being I was board member for a couple of years on the academy. And yes, they do a wonderful job, and I'm glad Council continues its support for that academy.
And I think we sort of this came up in the discussion around the sports grants previously. It's currently a very difficult situation for community sports in general, given that not only are facilities are unable to be accessed, but also for elite athletes such as those supported by the academy, a lot of them don't have access to gyms or other facilities that will enable them to keep up their fitness in the meantime. So the work that the academy is doing is really assisting those sometimes very special young people within our community to keep engaged in something that's very important to them.
They also are an incubator for future Olympians.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Councillor Ode, have you still got your hand up or are you finished? No?
No, I'm finished.
Madam Mayor, I would like to say a few words.
Pardon me.
Councillor Ode, did you want to speak?
No, I was just apologising. I kept my hand up. I've taken it down. Right. Thank you.
Councillor Haggerty, you got your hand up? Nope, he hasn't. Councillor Rhodes, your turn.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I also have served on this academy board, and I do know the great work that they actually do for the young sports people. So, first of all, I would like to thank them most sincerely, and I know how difficult it must be for them at this particular time, because they too would be suffering from corporate sponsorship, which is extremely important to them. And as people become affected and businesses become affected by COVID-19, that becomes less secure than what possibly it has been. So I just want to thank Councillor Caliander for bringing the report to Council, and say a thank you to Liverpool Council for supporting these great people and the tremendous work that they do. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? I'll put it, those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move on to confidential items, and I am going to move into confidential session because there are items relating to costs, etc. And so I'm going to move into confidential under section 10(2) part 2, and I'll get the little and George can tell me when we are, and then I'll read the motions. At least you're not all getting up and walking out the room.
Yes, we are.
Well, you're probably going into another room, but not.
You've got 25 currently in this meeting, Madam Mayor, so I can count them down for you if you wish me to do so.
All right, George, have you got the motions that I can read out?
Council now, so we've put the motions that we read in that were dealt with in closed session. We'll put them up on the screen now.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I'll read them out. Well, actually, given it's a virtual meeting, it's no, I've got to read them out. That's the legal. Did they make that legal? Okay. Council decision that Council approves it's a recommendation of Legal Service Panel for RCL 2860, provision of external legal services for initial 3-year term with 2 options to renew for a period of 1 year each, makes public its decision regarding tender RCL 2860, provision of external legal services, notes that the Chief Executive Officer will finalise the details and sign the letter of acceptance and legal services agreement for the tender, giving it a contractual effect in accordance with the delegated authority, and keeps confidential the details supplied in this report containing information of submissions received pursuant to the provisions of section 10A(2)(d) of the Local Government Act 1993, as it contains commercial information of confidence nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it, and the Council's decision was adopted and it was carried. The next item was confidential 02. Council accepts the tender from Bingo Waste Services Proprietary Limited, tender ST 2952, receivable and processing of bulky goods in the initial 4-year contract term at the GST inclusive price of big money of $5,034 $34,960 based on the schedule of rates, with the option of extending a further 3 by 1 years as a precautionary in the case that the project is 24 is delayed. Makes public its decision regarding the tender ST 2952, receivable and processing of bulky waste. Notes that the Chief Executive Officer will finalise all details and sign the letter of acceptance following the publication of draft minutes of Council's website for the tender, giving it contractual effect in accordance with the delegated authority. And 4, keep confidential the details supplied in this report containing information of the submissions received pursuant to the provisions of Section 10A2D of the Local Government Act 1993, as it contains commercial information of commercial nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice and commercial position of the person who supplied it. And it was carried. The last item is animal shelter and koala hospital site options. And it was moved that Council approves the purchase of property identified in option 8 on the terms outlined in this report, delegates authority to the CEO and her delegate to negotiate the price in accordance with the valuation outlined in this report, authorise the CEO or her delegate officer to negotiate a management agreement or lease as identified in option 8 and option 10 as for temporary occupation if the agreement of purchase is not finalised, approves the temporary construction cost option as outlined in this report under construction consideration if the site is purchased, and in the instance there are works required to bring in an operational level, authorises the CEO or her delegate officer to execute any document under power of attorney necessary to give effect to this decision, resolves to classify the properties identified as option 3 or option 8 to be classified as operational land if purchased for the provision of the animal shelter. If these options are not realised, we proceed with option 9 and the land be reclassified as operation or an amendment to the plan of management. 7, that this further report be submitted to Council in July 2020 to provide an update of the progress of the animal shelter options. Notes that the future report dealing with the Koala Sanctuary Hospital will be submitted to Council once further investigations are complete and a detailed business case, I have to move it up, I can't read, up, thank you, developed to assess demand of such a facility and its viability and corresponding ongoing costs, that a report be brought back to Council on all the surplus lands that have been presented to the Council over the last few years, keeps confidential this report pursuant to the provisions of Section 10A2C of the Local Government Act 1993, as this information would, if disclosed, confer commercial advantage to a person with whom Council is conducting or proposes to conduct business. And the last item is that, and it was carried unanimously, last item was animal shelter as a notice of motion as submitted by Councillor Ayard and it lapsed due to the previous motion. I'd like to thank everybody for their patience and please stay safe.